All right. I believe we are live. Welcome everybody to another brand spanking new episode of the Break the Rules stream. I am your humble, extremely humble, with the library behind him host, Lev Polyakov at Lev Po on Twitter. We have a great panel for you today. Default Friend has returned. Bad Billy Pratt has returned, not Bad Billy Brat.
Brad.
And of course, the great Giovanni Pennacchietti. Bella. And we have a newcomer to the BTR experience, Clive Thompson. It is a great pleasure to have you here, author of Coders, The Making of a New Tribe and the Remaking of the World. And we are definitely going to be talking about the remaking of the world today through video game culture, something that people kind of put in the back of their minds as a hobby, something that certain kinds of people do, but it is something that I think has a lot to do with the popular culture at hand more and more as these divides that usually held fast and true as far as what defines a gamer starts to dissipate, and the question is what happens then. So, as an overall, before the overall look, Clive, is there anything else you would like to tell us about yourself for those who don't know?
No, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Okay, so you're also you also write for the New York Times and for.
Oh, I
various...
see. Yeah. I mean, I'm a journalist. I write for several magazines. I write for the New York Times Magazine, contributing writer there. I'm a columnist and contributing writer with Wired. I'm a columnist with Smithsonian Magazine, and I write for a few other places. Mother Jones and Medium. I have I blog 3 times a week at Medium, so you can find that's probably the most common flow of words, clivethompson.medium.com.
Excellent. So, Clive, let's actually start with you. I
Sure.
would love to know what you currently, before currently, what you
Right.
see as the gamer culture of the past,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
where do you see it going right now?
I'm a really, I mean, I'm a old school gamer because I'm 53. So I started playing games back in the video games back in the late 70s and early 80s, right? Like ranging from like Pong, when Pong was like a kind of a new thing, to Space Invaders and Pac-Man when you got the early arcade explosion of like around the very early 80s, and even a little bit on computers because my grade 6 teacher brought in his, like, he was like a hippie who hand built his own computer, when you had to like order a kit and build it yourself. And he got a copy of Zork, like the original Zork. So that's like, you are standing in an empty field text adventure. And he brought it into grade 6 and we sat around playing that. So I actually got to experience Zork in like, an old green screen computer. So I grew up with the first generation. I was part of the first generation of people who sort of didn't even call themselves gamers because that word didn't really exist yet. But for whom video games were like this absolutely all encompassing obsession. To play them, you mostly had to go to the arcades, although friends of mine started having the first generation of arcade systems, video game systems like Atari 2600s and stuff like that. And we also wrote our own video games because it was kind of the beginning of personal computers, like where you could get like a VIC-20 or a TRS-80 and Commodore 64, plug it into your TV. And one of the first things, it had no software; it just sat there with BASIC, and you had to program it. And of course, what you did is you program games. That's how you taught yourself to program. So it was like when I think about the origins of gaming and kind of where it all came from, it was really a deep subculture, right? Like this was not a it was regarded as a very, very nerdy thing. Like it was not something you did if you were a proper adult. It was not something you did if you had any other social avenues available to you. It was predominantly guys, not a lot of young girls or women in that culture for a bunch of reasons we can talk. And it was it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely not, it wasn't as big in mass as it is now, because when you look at gaming today, it's become just a completely normal part of mass mainstream culture. Like it's it like, and it's kind of interesting that we can talk about this when it made that trend, when it started to make that transition, such that like playing games was now seen as something that kind of anyone did. Probably, I would guess the mobile phone, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's my background. I was part of that first generation of gamers back when it was a really weird thing, and you went to an arcade to do it.
Excellent. Well, I think one of the things that we can start with, and this is kind of the big elephant in the room as far as the cultural divide that's currently going on right now, is the double G word, Gamergate. And this is something that you wrote about in a brief. Could you give us your opinion of what exactly transpired there? And I think that would be a good start to the conversation.
Well, I to be clear, I've never written about Gamergate myself.
You did. In the Coders, you wrote about Gamergate.
Oh, Gamergate, briefly though. I mean, like a couple of paragraphs. Yeah, I mean, like I can't say I've like done a huge amount of research into it, but I definitely followed it closely. So with Gamergate, what Gamergate happened? When Gamergate happened, I actually think. So I mentioned earlier that I said I think one of the things that really started to change the demographics of gaming was the mobile phone, and I think that's because suddenly, before that, if you wanted to be a quote unquote gamer, if you want to play games a lot, you needed to buy hardware to do it. You either had to have a console or you had to maybe, build yourself a decent gaming computer, right? And that meant that you actively sort of had to think of yourself as like, I'm going to play a lot of games. And so I'm going to set aside some capital, some money to acquire these systems to do that. And I think that's part of what made it like a self-identified group that you opted to join, right? And there's a bunch of reasons, we can talk about why that was primarily guys. When the mobile phone comes along, something starts happening, which is that like a device that's able to play games is suddenly in everyone's pockets, like demographically everywhere, right? You no longer have to actively think to yourself, I'm going to acquire a device that can play video games. It's just there. And the App Store, a lot of the early hits were all like simple games. And here's a key thing: they weren't crazy, quote unquote, hardcore games. Like they weren't like Quake style shooters or stuff like that, right? It was all like color matching games and stuff. So like
casual games.
Yeah, the quote unquote casual games that had grown up under Flash on the web, right? Flash on the web, casual games, the first thing that starts to really break open the category of gaming to a lot more people. But the mobile phone treble charges it, and I think actually some of the seeds of weirdly some of the seeds of what turns into Gamergate come from there, because you've got a bunch of these guys that regard gamer culture as something that is theirs, and they don't want any outsiders in. They particularly don't want women, and for a bunch of reasons, they many of them, like a chunk of them, enough of them, hold kind of reactionary ideas about women and reactionary ideas about feminism. That once you start getting that culture opened up, it's really unsettles them. And with Gamergate, what you really got was a campaign to try and attack several women that were actively trying to open up the concept of what video games were, right? To open it up, like Depression Quest, which is one of the first things that was attacked, the creator of which was attacked heavily in Gamergate, was literally an attempt to say, okay, games actually could be something that have an expressive rhetorical quality, so that allow them to like almost the way like an amazing book or poem or TV show explores really deep stuff. Games can do that. I've been writing about
Joanna Quinn.
Yeah, exactly. I've been writing about the expressive potential of video games for a long time. So I was 100% thrilled by this. I was like, yes, exactly. These things have always had the ability to sort of talk in this broad way, and to be these incredibly deep artistic experiences. I think they already were, but this opened up new areas. And, so, like the sort of rage against the presence of women and and feminist ideas in coming into the video game world, amongst these highly reactionary set of gamers that decided to like mount this brutal, harassment campaign, that's part of what was going on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Gamergate, but that's where I see part of it coming from.
Have you heard of, and I want to get to Default Friend next about this, but have you heard of the hashtag Not Your Shield?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And what does that mean to you?
Not Your Shield. Are we talking about in the context of like?
Well, in context of Gamergate.
That was what was that again exactly?
Default friend. Do you, I think you may be able to take it from here.
Yeah, take
I
it
don't
from
know
here
if
because I remember it, but I don't, like I said, I was not deep enough reporting this. I don't want to screw up a description of this, basically.
Is this like an anti-white knight thing? Like men are not
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I definitely remember the white knight conversation. Yeah.
Well, as far as Gamergate goes, that was definitely a part of it. If we're talking about Joanna Quinn, Depression Quest, I'm sure that there were definitely people out there that had some animus. But as far as the main issue, which goes to how gaming itself ended up changing as far as gaming journalism and all that, Default Friend, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that part of it.
Yeah, so like how it ended up changing, or like what people's positions were?
Let's start originally with Gamergate as far as what was the motive for people to go after Joanna Quinn and Depression Quest, and what were
Wait, you mean Zoe Quinn?
Zoe Quinn, yeah.
Zoe Quinn.
My friend is actually named Joanna Quinn. She's a great animator. She's actually the one who created those Charmin bears. You remember the Charmin bear commercial? That was Joanna's work.
No way.
Oh wow.
Yeah, really talented animator. But anyway, yeah. So with Zoe Quinn, Depression Quest, what were some of the things that they felt was going on behind the scenes in the video game journalism industry that Gamergate was addressing, and how much would you say was that versus the anti-women sentiment that Clive was talking about?
Right. So with Zoe, it was the accusation that she was selling her, well, not selling, she was advertising her sexual wares in exchange for good, for good reviews. And then that was sort of like the underlying, it's not just Zoe, it's just women come into these spaces and they know that they could use their sexual wiles to gain any, whether good reviews or attention or access into spaces. I mean, the complicated thing is like a lot of these guys, I'm going to balance out my pick-me opinion with, some wokeness here. But, a lot of these guys do have a deep distrust of women and are misogynists. However, to their credit, women do, and you can see this with sort of the archetype of what the gamer girl has become. And if you hop on Twitch and what that has become, women do come into these spaces, and they were initially spaces that were safe for one, men, and then two, like kind of masculine or autistic women, and prettier women or women who are more sexual game it and use that to get attention of all sorts of varieties. And I sympathize with people who find that frustrating, right? Like there is something real about that, but do you stop it with a harassment campaign? Well, obviously they weren't successful. It's even worse now.
Yeah, they really won, I think, because like if you look at, okay, so let's go. Sure. Am I stepping anyone's toes?
Go for it.
Well, I would push back on the harassment narrative to say that I think Gamergate started off with a bunch of like primarily YouTubers from the New Atheist movement who weren't particularly right wing, but rather they were just nerds, and they wanted to protect what they saw as an authenticity to their like gamer culture or whatever. But I would say that as time went on, you do have people to the right. I mean, I was one of them, obviously, who would saw an opportunity in it because it really did become a culture war. And then you had people within it that denied the fact that it was a culture war issue, sticking point, or shelling point. People like Sargon, they tried to play this little game where no, it's not about a culture war. It's about ethics in gaming journalism, which is of course
gaming journalism
bullshit, right? Yeah. So what happened was later on, you did have some degree of harassment. I will not deny that, but I think that a lot of it was the other side was able, whether it's Anita or Zoe or whatever, they were able to really harness the power of the media to like demonize a lot of these guys, or like whether it was people like, I don't know. Well, we had Kathy Young on this podcast, actually. People like her who later defected. And it was just a huge mess because what happened was all Anita and Zoe had to do was wait, because all of the E-celeb, most of them, except for Sargon and a few of them, except for Daddy Jim, Mr. Medicare, they had to wait because all of these E-celebs that became very prominent during this time basically destroyed themselves. Davis Arini destroyed himself. Who else am I thinking of here? Yeah. All of them are gone now. All of them, because either they got banned or they became drunk off of their own clout or so forth. But that's a side issue. I think what happened with Gamergate was it was a huge sort of watermark shelling ticks of the next probably few decades that we're in right now. And I know people, they like to basically make this, people in the media, they like to make this chain where, Gamergate caused the alt-right caused Trump. I think it's kind of like suspicious, but there's something to it, but not really, because I think people, they sort of, on the one end, inflate the power that Gamergate had, but on the other end, they sort of deny how it really kind of was a turning point, at least in terms of the internet converging with political life to such a degree. It was really one of the first, not the first, there was online movements before, but I think it was the first effective online movement to the point where it rose to a mainstream level. And whether I truly think they were a failure from my perspective anyways, because they didn't really accomplish much. I mean, the game industry is worse than it's ever been.
Well,
so,
yeah. They accomplished an enormous amount of harassment against a bunch of women.
I don't know.
No. That stuff was real. I saw it. It was brutal. It was dehumanizing. It was completely denied by an enormous amount of people. I mean, like people like, you mentioned Nita Sarkeesian. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that she got. It is absolutely loathsome. Now, I don't know how many.
But everyone on the internet, I think.
No, not even remotely true. I have a reasonable amount of followers. I got 41,000 followers. I have never in 13 years on Twitter received anything even remotely close to that. So I think it is absolute nonsense to say that it didn't accomplish anything and that it didn't have any effect and this was small stuff. Or that they had to wait around for it to vanish. They couldn't wait around. Their at replies were utterly useless for days and weeks on end because of the scale of abuse they were getting.
But Clive,
no, but I mean, in terms of the actual people involved in Gamergate, a lot of them were they're gone now. Anita won. Anita got to make her speech at the UN.
Well, I mean that's kind of a kind of a Pyrrhic victory. I mean, like it I don't know.
No, but the question here is there was a comment earlier on, and I definitely want to get to Bad Billy Pratt as well.
Yeah,
there was a comment earlier on. People in Gamergate literally donated money to an organization to get women in game development. The name of the organization was Find Young Capitalists. So the thing that I want to look at here, and I think this is the most important thing, is that we are living in the political landscape, and we're always going to have people who are, as I would say, like political opportunists, people who exist in any era, who come in and who claim to be a voice of a generation. They get lots of money, they get lots of contracts, lots of deals with various NGOs, and these are the people that are propped up. Then you have other people that go against them, but they use the shield of whether it's gender, sexual identity, things of that nature, to get away with certain things that other people online.
Give me some examples.
Okay, so yes,
Anita Sarkeesian having a Patreon where she's making a ton of money for, if I recall correctly, not producing the amount of videos that she promised. I mean, Anita was able to parlay all of the harassment, which I'm willing to believe was real, to a ton of money. I mean, there is that side of it. Like, and
hold it. Are you saying she didn't produce? She's produced a mountain of videos.
I remember, you may be right. I remember the meme being that she didn't produce, but she was.
Okay, you remember a meme? I don't care if you remember a meme. I want to know what the facts were.
No, she had this long form project that she was going to release, but then I mean, I don't know. At the same token, there were people like Irini that wanted to release that terrible documentary on Anita that didn't come to anything because of infighting. But that's another.
No, it's not so much about. It's not so much, I'd say, about the work that's released. It's more about post Gamergate. How exactly do we define ourselves as far as the people who are on one side versus the people who are on another side? So, for example, I think that one of the most important things in any culture, Clive, and I think you'll agree with me, is ridicule culture. Things like South Park, for instance. Fools, jesters that could come in and make fun of sacred cows. What I find today in various aspects of, I guess you could call it I wouldn't call it high culture. I would call it culture, coastal culture. I would call it the upper managerial class culture. New Yorker magazine, things of that nature. Within that culture, whenever anything is brought up that ridicules sacred cows, people start panicking, people start getting extremely emotional because I think that there's just been this infection that took people over. And I see Gamergate as being something that prompted a lot of this infection in terms of occurring. And then you have people on the other side who in turn start...
What sacred cows are we talking about here?
Well, let's see. Billy Pratt, what would you say are the big sacred cows here that today are, not allowed to be infringed upon?
Like the sacred cows of like gaming tropes.
Gaming tropes, but also media in general, as far as what distinguishes people who, let's say, would be more in the rebellious category versus people who are in more of the mainstream category.
I mean, there are a set of rules that you are supposed to follow if you're a mainstream kind of talking head. And I think that that's why they hate the anonymous internet so much, because there are no rules suddenly. So like outside of
what rules?
All right, let's throw one out here. You can't.
I definitely believe that there are protocols and norms in communities. I'm not.
But I think it's rather like this is the first time where the anon internet actually had a direct impact, or one of the first times. Sorry, default or Billy.
Default friend. Let's go with default friend first.
So here's a sacred cow. So there is this real thing that these, this quote unquote like harassment campaign was calling out, which is women do come into male dominated spaces and they want attention, and that it's anybody's guess if that's good or bad, but that's real. You can't talk about that in even a neutral way.
Are you saying that women, that the great majority of women that wanted to get into gaming were there just for attention?
That's not what I'm saying.
I wasn't accusing you. I was trying to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you're saying there were some women that got in just for attention, sort of. And
even if it's not just for attention, it's that it's something that women do in the same way that, like, Johnny Football Hero might be like, a little bit, might lead on some, like, fat chick who's like really good at math or something. Like, these are tropes because they actually happen. And that doesn't mean that everyone involved is evil. But we're not really allowed to call out these social dynamics that it's okay to be upset by, right?
Hold it. I think it's even remotely true that you can't call those out. In fact, one of the things feminism's been trying to do for like 30 or 40 years is examine the ways in which people get judged and rewarded by their appearance, basically. I mean,
I don't think I would love if feminism spoke in a serious way about the way that some women can, move up the ranks and, again, like, game it, but they really don't. Like, what mainstream feminism has done has tried to expand the definition of beauty instead of de-emphasize beauty and sexuality and say, like, you don't need to do this, right? Instead it said everyone's a bimbo, everyone's hot, use the guy, men are trash. And that's not all feminism. I know there's many different varieties of it, but that's the feminism that's mainstream and popular.
Yeah. Is that actually true? I mean, give me some names here. Who are we talking about?
I mean, this is what gets represented in the media.
Well, like pop liberal feminism.
Right, exactly.
Again, examples, names. You guys are speaking generally.
Well, okay. Fat acceptance would be probably like the biggest.
Biggest.
There. I mean, shut up. I could say that. I have a right to. My God. According to some Finnish people, I'm a fat, disgusting.
Healthy at any size, things like that.
No, I think that. I think what Default is saying is that there was, I think, in the 1990s, you did have a lot of feminism that did probably want to de-emphasize the sort of, I mean, it's a very misappropriated term, but like, let's call it the male gaze. You had Naomi Wolf's work on the beauty industry. You had No Logo and so forth. But as time went on, I think that the expansion of what the beauty standard is probably what leads into things like the quote unquote aesthetic of the gamer girl. I think that was a powerful force. And like, it's very contrast to one of my good friends who's an anonymous writer. Her name is Impossible Princess. She talks about the experience of being a woman on the early internet when everything was largely anonymous as opposed to nowadays. And Default, you talk about this a lot. And I think that what happened was you had anonymous women posters on the internet, but they were of a typical socioeconomic and I would say how shall I put this? They were a particular class, and they were very much into the confessional writing and things of that nature. But as time went on, I think that as gaming culture became mainstream, the emphasis on a whole new market base became mainstream. And with that, and of course, like you said, the mobile game. Now, I will say that the problem is there is a lot of sort of like, what would you call it, stereotypically, like incel misogyny around these issues. Obviously, like, the e-girl is evil. No, e-girls never. But of course, well, I view that with suspicion, because I'm not going to get into that. But let's just say that there is sort of a hermeneutics of suspicion around women and predominantly male spaces for good and bad reasons, obviously. So
I mean, I think it's useful to sort of take this I mean, I'm not sure why we're talking, when we talk about women in gaming, we're only talking about sort of Twitch streamers, that that sort of vamp up their appearance, because like that's not most women in gaming, right?
No.
And if you, but if you actually talk about most women in gaming, like the picture gets actually kind of interesting, because in many cases, you can find, women who, I think increasingly find a lot easier to get accepted in gamer culture, because it becomes much bigger, right? Like their friends play games, so it's not, it's simply less, I think in a good way, it's less sort of clannish than it used to be. And so, if people are throwing it down on Xbox, there's women, there's men there, that's actually, I think, really terrific in a lot of ways. But there's honestly still a surprising amount of just, like literally I wrote a story about Minecraft a couple of years ago, which you would actually think would be like literally one of the nicest, sweetest cultures imaginable.
A lot of skeletons in that closet.
It's Minecraft, right? Everyone's building blocks and stuff. And frequently that that was perfectly true. I talked to. So I interviewed dozens and dozens of kids that played it. We're talking in ages from like 9 to like 18. And it was probably, it's a small sample, so I can't say it's scientifically huge in any particular way, but a significant, I guess, maybe half of the girls I spoke to, I just learned to sort of deal with just habitually being sexually called out or harassed. They show up in a multiplayer world and someone's written bitch in blocks and stuff like that. And this is not even a world where they even have a cam on. Like they literally just have their tag on their name just happens to have a female thing. So, again, not a uniform experience, but like, I think it feels like if we want to talk about what the experience of women in gaming is, I don't know why we're talking just about a bunch of influencers, basically, because they're a statistically tiny minority of the people who are playing games.
Well, we have influencers on the one hand, like the Twitch girls that we were talking about. On the other hand, you have the girls who game, who I wouldn't even call quote-unquote gamer girls. I would just say that they are gamers.
Yeah, they're just gamers, exactly.
So if I was, for example, at a comedy festival where I would be around guys and girls as well, and everybody would be ribbing into each other, making fun of each other, and there is something about that I think unites people, where we can actually openly speak about the various differences and make fun of them. Same thing with like various racial differences, various customs. When people are allowed to criticize and make fun of each other with those things, again, something like South Park, for example, I find that it actually brings people together. What I do find, though, and this has been repeated often within a lot of the anonymous communities, is that you would have a certain industry of people who really, really like the particular culture within the industry. There would be maybe more guys than girls, fine, but regardless, there is a specific industry. Then the industry gets infiltrated not by mainstream people, it would get infiltrated by left-leaning activists who don't have any desire at all to be part of this culture. They want to take the culture, they want to mold it into their own image, and they want to kick the people who were originally part of the culture out.
Yeah,
and I think
give me some examples again. I don't want to talk vaguely.
I think somebody like Anita Sarkeesian would be one example of it.
Do you really think she was just trying to invade the culture and destroy it?
Well, I mean,
because honestly, because when I looked at those videos, they struck me as like, it's kind of funny. I remember when they first came along, I was like, and people were saying these are like these savage takedowns of gamer culture. And I looked at them and they were the most anodyne, like absolutely non-radical, completely by the
I mean, the
numbers,
problem
middle of
is
the
it's
road
like-
feminist analysis of games. I mean, I was like, people are freaking out about this. What are they talking about?
But Catherine?
The problem is that like multiple things are true, right? Like there is a lot of harassment and a lot of women who have a higher profile in these communities are mistreated. But at the same time, and there are overreactions, right? Like there is just a skepticism of women. I think because there's so few male spaces, and the gatekeeping feels sort of like a necessary evil to a lot of people.
By the way, I'm going to say there are not so many few male places. I'm a man. I've been living in the world for 53 years. There are tons of male spaces. That's an absolute
Well, no, I mean,
start.
I think the culture in general has.
Clive, let's just be
Yeah,
fair
yeah.
over here. If we're both living in New York City.
There are so many safe spaces for men that
No,
literally,
Clive, let's be clear. We're living in New York City. There is no safe space for people today who, let's say, would be, for example, Trump supporters in New York City. Just as an example.
Not true. That's not even remotely true. My next door neighbor is a Trump supporter.
Well, finally it's being brought out.
Staten Island is crawling with them.
Okay, Staten Island.
I think that
Staten
when
Island
it comes
is Staten
to,
Island.
Yeah, well, that's
No, but Clive, let's be honest.
Most of the rich people of Manhattan voted.
But they're not going to say it. They're not going to say it, Clive. No, they're not.
No, everything you're saying is wrong. My son worked for a campaign, political campaign. He helped do leafleting on the streets for like 6 months. And he talked to, and so you're just asking people.
Yes.
And like a significant chunk, minority of people, Republicans, who told him he was like a brainwashed liberal, and they were happy to talk about
in
being
private.
A
In private, Clive. No, in private.
This isn't in private. This is
yes,
on the streets of New York to a stranger.
It's not the same. If you're speaking on the stranger, no. I gotta say something here. Clive. If you're speaking on the street with a stranger, it is not the same thing as speaking at a party with your coworkers and your boss and people who are going to fire you if you say the wrong thing. Clive, we're living in an age of censorship right now, especially on the coasts.
Lev, I don't know, man.
I
think you are being overly general about a more complex.
Maybe.
Clive, I go to the National Arts Club. You know that I notice these things. You know that they're there. But anyway, default friend.
My only point was that it's like both things are true, and I think what really triggers these hate campaigns, which, by the way, Clive, it's certainly not at the level
what
of...
triggers the hate campaigns is misogyny that goes back hundreds of years. It's radiantly obvious.
You keep talking over the female guest. Right? Like I was gonna say, I not to this, obviously not to the scale of Zoe Quinn or Anita Sarkeesian, but I have been chased off the internet so many times that it's like a joke. But I mean, Gio knows better than I.
Default fed.
You know, I have had people show up at my house. Like it is it's not just people like, oh, you're fat, you're ugly. It's like it rises to the level of like I have police reports open in 4 different states at this point. I am aware of how these hate campaigns work, and I know I get less than a fourth of what these women received. However, there is and what triggers that hate campaigns is not just a woman existing, it's the feeling that they're trying to infringe on a safe male space. And it's a form of gatekeeping to keep the space safe. Is that appropriate? You know, again, that's anybody's guess. Who knows?
No, hold on, but I just want to go back to Anita here. She was putting out a bunch of videos that said absolutely like middle of the road, not very non-radical ideas about gender roles in games. Something that it's so utterly anodyne, and for that she got death threats. That's not gatekeeping. That's not me. That's not people saying we don't want you here because they're saying we don't want to even entertain these ideas, which are completely, even if you disagree with them, they're fairly anodyne.
Here's the question: who was sending the death threats?
I will agree with you, Clive. I think that some of the original videos, now that I go back on them, I do think that they were mild in that. I think there was probably an attempt. Maybe not in media is this sophisticated, but I think that there was an attempt to apply literary criticism to a medium such as video game, which hadn't really had an academic lens up until that point. But I think like what people latched onto is some of them, like maybe not Anita. Let's get rid of Anita. Let's focus on, I think, the response, what happened after with going back and forth. I think like there were probably a lot of radicals that after the Gamergate thing happened, I don't know. I just think that the discourse itself devolved into like tribal factions, and it's like, here's this e-celeb battling this e-celeb. And then of course after Gamergate we had internet blood sports, which was like terrible and not productive. And by the way, Lev, speaking of gamers, the Gator has now officially left Ethan Ralph.
Oh no,
Ethan Ralph is alone.
We gotta get him on. We gotta get the Gator on.
Yes, we have to get Gator on.
No, but I think
Gator.
I think this talks to a bigger issue though, like to put this a bit aside, the Gamergate itself, and focus more on what happened afterwards, what's happening right now. So if we're talking about,
I have another schizo.
Okay, hold on. Yeah. If we're talking about journalism in general, and the thing that people were pointing to, this inner community of journalists who were inside of Gamergate that were making up their minds about particular games, like which ones they're going to promote, which ones they're not going to promote. This is the thing that freaks a lot of people out, Clive, because when they think of the media, when they think of the New York Times and all these journalist publications, the thing that they are the most afraid of is that this is the establishment, this is the blue empire, and these are the people who are going to look up, put up their noses at people, tell them what they are and aren't allowed to think. And I think, Clive, you notice that there is this backlash against the journos today. I think there is a connection between that at Gamergate, but another connection with something called Tumblr, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, sure.
So, Default Friend, you are a resident Tumblr expert. How do you see something like Tumblr influencing the kind of culture that we are in today?
I remember that summer, actually, it was 2014 or...
And specifically mainstream culture as well.
So the funny thing about Tumblr, and then also, of course, 4chan and Reddit, and I just as a quick disclaimer, I'm carrying the torch of Angela Nagel. This isn't, this isn't a theory I invented or anything. But what happened was, and Clive, I'm sure you'll agree with this, a little bit before Gamergate, digital publications start slashing budgets, and you have all these freelancers who are writing for pennies, and they're scraping content from these platforms. And Tumblr...
they're scraping, you mean, like they're just like they're repurposing stuff they find online to make a story. Yeah.
Right. And there's, and this was actually, like, the way it happened specifically with Tumblr is very well documented. Like PBS and the New York Times both at the, like, in 2012 were like, oh fuck, like we need to, like, make sure more junior writers aren't just going to Tumblr, seeing one or two people saying something outlandish, inventing a community around it and writing about it.
Like clicks. Vice did that. The Vice was the master of that.
But what ended up happening, right, is like it created this weird feedback loop. So a really well documented example, and one of my favorites, is with BuzzFeed. So BuzzFeed wrote an article about homies, which were hybristophiles who thought that I think his name was James Holmes, the Aurora shooter, was hot. Well, it turned out it was like half a joke. There was like 4 posts about it, but they wrote about it as though it was a really big deal, and then it actually created the community. And a lot of like
Columbiners,
right? And a lot of the more outlandish like excesses of wokeness. If you look back, there is no long history of them being vibrant communities. They're like weird things that were on Tumblr for a whole host of reasons that like you could write a whole book about. That got pulled into the mainstream. And the problem is this happened with like behaviors too, not just communities. Another like really interesting example, and again well documented, not my own finding, not my own theory, is with the whole Oberlin cultural appropriation disaster. Right, like that was the product of something of a Tumblr attitude and an underpaid journalist and a story that was a little bit weird getting misinterpreted and blown up and turned into clickbait.
I don't think I remember that one. What happened?
Okay, so what happened was cultural appropriation was just sort of, obviously it had been a real concept for a long time, but it was really
since
bubbling.
the 80s at least, yeah.
Right. It was really bubbling on Tumblr, and everything was cultural appropriation. Like you can't, and it was really present in fandom, right? And a lot of journalists are heavy Tumblr users, and they're internalizing a lot of these things. At the same time, a student at Oberlin writes a pretty milquetoast article about how the cafeteria is serving banh mi, but it's really just a sandwich. And it was for a class, and she does some quote unquote like investigation. She
Mhm.
discovers that actually they do this with a lot of different foods, and so it gets like posted to Facebook or something. And then what happens is a journalist sees this Oberlin article and then writes about the article through the lens of this attitude that's very prevalent online, but did not necessarily exist in that particular situation. And then it turns into this national conversation about cultural appropriation. But you see that happen again and again and again throughout the 2010s.
And I wanted to get Billy in, because you come mostly from Manosphere fame. In fact, I was reading your blog back in 2015.
It's 2015.
Yeah, and I think from your perspective, do you remember the Gamergate discourse, and do you remember when specifically from one of the most, I would say, hated fandoms on the internet? We want to get to fandom because Default Friend has a theory on fandom that we could run by Clive. So from your perspective at that time, what did you make of the Gamergate thing, and what did you make of internet e-politics in general? Yeah.
I think the gamer thing was at the heart of it, angry incels. And you could talk about whether they. I mean,
hey, that's true. It's true.
The joke at the time was the ethics in journalism. That was kind of it became a meme because it was just such a ridiculous cover for being angry at a woman using whatever it takes to kind of get to what end she wants to accomplish. But yeah, I feel like it just wasn't something that could possibly have legs because at the end of the day, the gamer is a consumer and consumers just don't win. It's like gamers are, addicted to their substance of choice, right? Their electronic of choice. And how long are they going to be catered to? I mean, things are going to gradually change until it doesn't really resemble what they were trying to protect. Are they going to still be on the line? Are they going to still be buying the product? Probably. So what is it? I mean, they kind of lucked out for it taking place when it did. I don't think anyone saw it coming or was ready for it or even understood internet culture or thought it mattered. And things are changed, so much 5 or 6 years later that, and anything like that is just going to be shut down immediately, clamped down. Yeah. There would be kind of more united front against it.
I have two theories, and then I want to get to Clive. One is that I think the excesses of the late-term Obama administration, around, I would say 2013, when the Supreme Court handed a bunch of victories, and there was also cultural things like the Bristol Palin, what's politically correct term for child out of wedlock, not the B word, but there was that. There was a bunch of other things. There was, of course, the marriage issue. I think that was partially responsible. There was sort of NRX probably had something to do with it a little bit because the blogger sphere is going heavy. But also I think that what happened in 2014 with the 4chan versus Tumblr trolling war, that probably was the spark that lit the cantina of gasoline. But also there was this other theory. I got to shout out one of my friends on Twitter, Navid Hulbeck, who has this elaborate theory that basically the gaming industry, there was a lot of, let's call it, glow-in-the-dark activity involved, where they were using Gamergate to basically suppress a lot of Japanese outlets from creating more of a Western front, in that they would mostly focus on Western culture, identity politics at the behest of these Japanese platforms that were producing some of the most innovative video games in the world, right? And you could see this too, because I come from a love of I'm a pro wrestling fan, so Billy, you know this. What happened with New Japan when the Elite became their marquee in the West, right? They formed AEW, right? Because that basically cut the Japanese expansion for professional wrestling. So I think in some ways Gamergate, there were I remember reading those threads where people were talking about there's glow in the darks, there's FBI, feds, there's people that are infiltrating. But I think when you talk about online movements, I think there is maybe not a degree of outright subversion, but there probably is something to it. There probably is at least a few bad actors who are quote unquote monitoring the situation. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but one of them has become an FBI informant after the whole one of those rallies. I think it was Seville. I don't know. But there was a lot of different things going on that produced this sort of miasma of culture war, only now almost 100% based online. And I don't know. I think it's yeah.
So you're saying that some of Gamergate was like infiltration by CIA people and stuff like that, or
Well,
Russian
not just CIA
agents or
people,
what?
but I think that there were probably bad actors that were using it to their advantage. Obviously.
Entirely possible. I mean, I think personally the Occam's razor works pretty well in this one. I mean, I've been around gaming culture since the 80s. There's a lot of nerds that are pretty sexist, and that turned out to be like a powerful example of it. But it's also it doesn't seem complicated.
Well, hold on.
Regardless
of who is behind the scenes, I tend to also believe Occam's razor because that's the easiest thing to believe. But regardless of whoever is behind the scenes, it's very interesting to note the cultural divide here between a more Japanese culture, if you will. Because if you take a look at 4chan, for instance, what is 4chan? 4chan was created from 2channel by Christopher Poole, aka Moot, and 2channel is the Japanese forum. Anime, incredibly popular there, and you would notice that a lot of people who are on the right, they tend to go more towards anime than to something like a lot of the Western cartoons. Yeah. And in a way, I think that what they see in a lot of Western entertainment, and again, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but the direction that they see things going, both with video games and beauty commercials and adverts. You remember you would have like the slim-looking woman in 2009 be replaced by this fat lady on the billboard for some health company or whatever. So I think they see it as being like Harrison Bergerson by Kurt Vonnegut. Clive, are you familiar with Harrison Bergerson?
Not really, no.
So Harrison Bergerson is a dystopia. In the year 2081, the Constitution dictates that all Americans are fully equal and not allowed to be smarter, better looking, or more physically able than anybody else. So that's the general outline of it. And I think the concern that a lot of people have is... Sorry, Gio?
It was written by Ray Bradbury?
No, Kurt Vonnegut.
Vonnegut, yeah.
So I think the concern that people have when they look at the way that Western gaming culture and Western culture in general is going is they are concerned about certain social engineering attempts to equalize everything, where people can't make fun of each other, where people can't stand up and show themselves off to be better. And that is a very dystopian thing, especially for somebody like myself from the USSR.
I lost track of how we got onto this subject. How does this relate to what we're talking about?
It relates extremely to gamer culture because as far as the
Well, they view a lot of Japanese culture as being like either free of North American political concerns or having like what they view as like the perfect neotenous female ultra feminine aesthetic, which I think is kind of suspect in my opinion. No, I mean I have a lot of friends who are into anime, but I think Deeple Friend, you talk about this a lot too. With like even the Tumblr crowd had that with like the waif ethereal aesthetic. I think like what attracts video games in terms like Japanese video games and anime to a lot of especially like people on the right in North America is obviously like they have a concern for like a peak aesthetic that is like veneration of beauty or some kind of like ultra feminine ideal.
Which historically has never turned out well, right? I mean, political cultures that valorize clean looks and clean lines and modernism and vorticism and Nietzscheism did not work out terribly well in the middle of the 20th
No, but what about the Renaissance, Clive? If you compare the dopey-looking medieval paintings to the works of Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and Donatello and Raphael,
well, that was a process, Lev. That was
also actually, I don't know if I'd call those medieval paintings dopey, man. I think medieval.
No, here's the interesting
on that one.
Here's the interesting thing about the medieval paintings. They look at you in a very critical way. If you ever go to the Met, there is one particular painting I remember where the Madonna is looking down at you like it would have looked down in the cathedral at people in this very, in this like, I am so powerful and you are these mere mortals who should bow down to me. And I think that there is this element of, arrogance that people perceive in these so-called social engineers, where when you were asking, what is this?
That comes from medieval. It was a medieval thing.
Yeah,
they have an arrogant feeling.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about, man.
All right, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to.
Can you amplify that before me?
Yes, I'm gonna have to load up that image. But the idea that I'm getting to here is that people don't like this feeling that they get of now we are going to be indoctrinated in these various SJW beliefs, like critical race theory, for example, why a lot of parents want to get their kids out of school right now, right? So when it happens to come to the parents' notice that these things are going on, they're starting to take action. And what happens? You have the FBI going against their parents, right, from the government. And what do people think when they see something like that? Oh my God, the government is out to get us for opposing these things.
What strong examples do we have of the FBI going after parents? I understand that they were concerned about the parents that were making violent threats at school
they
board,
started,
which is actually something law enforcement really ought to look into.
No, they started watching
because some of those school board things have become like filled with like literal death threats, right?
No, there was a proposal.
Well, I think we're getting off topic.
No, I think okay.
I mean, I just want to ground what we're talking about in actual. What's actually happening.
I think the core of what we're
I don't think the FBI is going after any parents that are just thinking, I don't like
no. There was an attempt to do that. There was an attempt for there to be this, this going into these school board meetings and keeping an eye on the parents who voice dissent, and that is what people don't like. And that
give me some receipts here. What are we talking about?
All right. Hold on. Let me find the receipts. But while I'm finding the receipts, Bad Pully Pratt, do you have anything to say about this?
Well, I mean, if we were just so off topic, I just wanted to clarify what are Gamergaters trying to protect? Because I feel like we're kind of fluctuating between like a culture of like open speech, and I guess that would be like to each other on the internet or over like some kind of like Xbox Live headset, or is it that the games themselves are changing?
True. Oh, Xbox Live. Oh God.
Guys, I haven't played a video game in a long time, but I just wonder what it is we're talking about, because I know that there's a limited number of AAA studios, and if they're talking about those big budget games, which there are only going to be so many of, kind of like getting watered down as far as, because from what I could tell, it's still, the protagonist kills 1,000 people, and that's your video game. And they almost like that's very common.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem to me that much has been watered down or destroyed. And I mean, gaming culture. This is sort of one of the things I found kind of baffling about the surface arguments of Gamergate, because I've been playing Halo for the last week, and I've been having plenty of time achieving war criminal levels of homicides. I'm just in there killing like mad. It's there's guts in the ceiling. So
I have a friend who's a gaming journalist, and I've wanted to have him on my podcast. Now, if I know you're not familiar with me, Clive, but I'm not like super right wing or anything. I'm not really that provocative. I'm so much of a centrist. It's almost like a joke about how much of a centrist I am. Yeah. And he is fearful to go on my show and to speak his mind because the culture that he's working in is so left wing, and by left wing, I think he just means so like concerned with political correctness. And of course, I'm not. It's his livelihood's more important than having him on my bullshit podcast or whatever, right? But I think that's one part of what people were afraid of. Was it like that before? I don't know. Probably not. But like how far does that extend? Does that attitude exist at like conferences, if people, or conventions, if people are going to them? Does it exist in like what is the moderation like on games, different streaming platforms? And I think that's not the whole issue, but that's one piece of it.
So what does he want to say that he can't say?
I think it's just generally just like, I have like because I don't have the best filter in the world. It's like I don't neatly fit into one box or the other. So it could be a little bit provocative for the community. Like, I'm not provocative in any real sense, but for the particular community that he's in, I am.
I mean, like, that could be true. I mean, I all I'm saying is the concerns about dystopia that y'all seem to be worried about being here just do not seem to match reality as I can see it. I definitely think that I mean, I'm not even sure gaming culture has changed all that much. I mean, like, definitely maybe there's less, sort of obviously Lara Croftian dimensions of some of the women. Maybe there's I'm not even sure what I mean. Can we point to any major changes?
Well, there are
in games that
well, there is a conscious effort to like descale, like what was the massive? Like, there's a bunch of memes around a Mass Effect. Well, the marquee of this stream, the banner image comes from Last of Us 2, which, I mean, that gets into the weed of it. Although it did produce a lot of good memes, like the choking meme. I love that one because it's like the one is like of Chris Chan and Sonichu is choking him out, and Chris Chan's like, "I created you."
Oh, God.
But no, I think that there is sort of, which in some ways I do agree that maybe a lot of like the skimpier outfits are kind of just for like a largely like young male sexually frustrated audience. But in terms of games in general, I think like this, and it has nothing to do with politics. It has more to do with consumer capitalism in general. Games have become shittier and less playable and more like fan servicey just because of the trend of having like billions of dollars in the game industry and like, them not really caring about their audiences. I mean, I'm not a gamer myself, but from what I hear from people that play video games, it's like kind of abysmal in terms of the quality, except for like some like weird indie studios, or like a lot of the Japanese ones are still going well. But in terms of politics, there is like a conscious effort, I think, to cater to the most vocal minority of people who do, by and large, have a lot of clout within the gaming industry, whether they're of particular identities or not. I think that's an objective fact. Whether or not that's going to impact the staleness of games is probably overestimated, because like games have just been shit for the past 10 years in general. So I don't know. It's just, yeah, I can see both sides of it, I guess.
Clive, what do you think?
I mean, I mean, like, like there's I don't actually work for any corporation. I work for myself. I've been sitting at home for 25 years, so I don't actually know what it might be like at this guy's workplace. Maybe it's really stultifying. It could be true. I simply don't buy any idea that there's massive woke mobs that are destroying gaming. Basically, it doesn't. There don't seem any facts there. The games still seem pretty good. There's undoubtedly crazy fights going on between folks online, but yeah.
I don't see the woke mobs right now being represented that much in a lot of the, let's say, popular games that people like to play. Although I do notice that they're being, for example, like that G4 reboot that recently happened. There was this whole brouhaha from the lady who was using the opportunity to talk, again, not about interesting games, but to criticize the audience for sexism. So that is one aspect where I see it's not even so much.
I don't think I followed that. What happened?
Billy Pratt. Do you remember the lady's name?
Frosk.
Yes, Frosk. So what exactly happened there?
So Frosk went on a rant on her G4 show. I think the segment was like, "Oh, what's your gaming gripe?" And Frosk kind of took that opportunity to talk about how apparently on G4 there was this like really hot co-host like way back in like the 2000s when it was on. She was like some kind of model, and I guess people are comparing Frosk, who is not a model. I think Frosk is a professional gamer, to her, and just making kind of jerky comments in like the stream comments. And she just took that opportunity to kind of talk about how the female co-host on the show isn't there for eye candy, even though the last one was. And it kind of just went from there.
What happened? What was the sort of fallout from that?
Well, the follow-up from that was that G4 ended up...
got canned, yeah.
Yeah, nothing really happened. But the interesting thing, Clive, what you were pointing out about...
Is that why they canned it?
Yes. And the interesting
Well,
thing
there was
is that,
other issues, but yeah, that's
no.
one.
But the interesting thing to me here is that you were pointing out how the top games, people play them and they're very interesting right now. I agree. What I do see though is that whenever people who are within the establishment media, whatever you want to call it, when they take up the issue of games and gamer culture, there is a very specific side that they team up with as opposed to teaming up with the other one. Where if they had yeah.
I mean, maybe they just disagree with it. Maybe they're. I mean, like, maybe they think that.
No, but it's too specific.
Again, it's an Occam's razor thing.
If we're talking about like the short blue hair and like all these various styles, it's a look. It's a very specific look that the mainstream publications take
back
with
on
gamer
the
culture.
hot influencer thing, right?
No, it's not hot influencer. It's the.
What are we talking about?
I'll tell you.
You're speaking so vaguely, Lev.
I am not going to speak vaguely. I shall explain. We are not talking about hot influencers. We are specifically talking about like these short, blue-haired, SJW-styled people. This is a kind of culture that I think a lot of mainstream publications find very hip and with it, and those are the cultures that they want to promulgate through, whether it's, Teen Vogue, Vox, any of these publications. And they portray anybody who has a dissenting opinion about gender, about culture, about sexuality as being these evil incel bigots. And it's the same thing over and over again.
There's smaller ones, like Mel Magazine is one of them.
And we're seeing this not so much, I'd say, in games, although it is slowly creeping into certain AA plus titles. But I think in terms of the actual journalism of the games, this is something that has been there for a long time. And the reason why I mentioned Gamergate in the beginning, Clive, is that I think that it descends from Gamergate into every single piece of journalism that has this culture war aspect within it from the mainstream. I just see it every day when I take a look at all these publications, and it is there. I can't pretend it isn't.
I haven't got a lot of time. Unfortunately, I only had an hour free to chat. So
I definitely appreciate it.
I got to wrap it up. Thank you for having me. I mean, I think you might have. I think you might be oversampling things a bit, Lev. Rarely are media as unified as you seem to think they are.
If you go to Harvard and if you go to Columbia, you think they disagree?
Dude, Harvard and Columbia are not the world. I mean, I don't think this media is the world either. But they pretend like they are. And also, like, frankly, I'd need to even ask you what you mean with the word media, right? I mean, do you mean
he means the press, Clive. He means the press.
Okay. So what is the press and what isn't the press, right? I mean,
are you kidding me?
No. What I mean is, like, is a website part of the media? You guys have this idea that there's this like incredibly powerful cartel.
There is a consensus among certain people, or rather, there is a sort of mindset that a lot of journalists have. I think it's not a controversial statement, and it tends to be sort of leftward and cultural issues. And I think that maybe in America, in America, there probably is more of a leeway, but in Canada, where I'm from, like, for example, with the truckers, I mean, it's uniformly like these people are evil, they're demons, they're terrorists, and it's just like, I think that what people are pointing out with the media is that they're fundamental in terms of manufacturing consent for certain political causes. I think that's what people are griping about. And but I think, I mean, you have to go. So let's ask you one final question.
Sure.
Where do you see the future of video games going with VR, with everything? Where do you see the trends from someone who's in the trenches of the media? I mean,
I think games are, like, I think rather delightfully, for me, who spent years with trying to get people to talk about media, trying to get mainstream media to let me write about it, and them not wanting to because they just thought it was a bunch of nerdy nonsense. And I'm like, no, this is real culture, guys. Like, I mean, like, it was like 15 years of waiting until my mid 30s before someone would let me write a big article about it. And of course, everyone loved it because there's a lot of gamers out there that wanted to read about this stuff. So I'm actually quite happy that games have become like a really big, unignorable part of mainstream culture in a way that I think is great. And I don't think that's going away. I think that's just going to continue. If anything, I think games are going to become, you already see that one of the wonderful things about them is how much they influence the aesthetics of everything else, right? Like, things that aren't games are kind of excited by the visual palette that games bring, and and they copy them and they rip it off. So they're you know, the visual styles that were invented in games are now part of the palette of what you see on TV and movies. So that to me, I think is like a trajectory that is consistent. I think actually gaming culture is games are going to continue to become very big. VR, I don't know. It's a really good question.
People stuck in the pods in the VR landscape.
I nerdily love VR. Right? Like it's so much fun to do. You know, every time I put on the Oculus and play something, I'm like, oh god, this feels like the future. But you know, after 20 minutes, my head's all sweaty. I feel like I can't do it anymore. So there's clearly some sort of technological
brain chip.
Maybe the brain chip, yeah. You know, or maybe it'll be like just more like an AR things that are a little lighter weight. You know, I wrote about the HoloLens, and they were like, look, dude, this is great. We love what we're doing, but until we get it to the weight of your glasses, it's not really going to take off. But you know, engineers are good at this stuff, so I think in the long run they'll get there. So I think we could be looking at some very interesting stuff, but it might be a little further off in terms of AR and VR. But you know, like, I mean, in one sense, we're already there, right? I mean, you know, like I stare at my phone, you know,
I mean,
like
look at this.
While I'm walking down the street. That's effectively already me living in a virtual reality.
But even this kind of virtual
into telephone poles,
even this virtual live stream that we're doing right now is an example of virtual reality. And one last thing, just because you asked me, so earlier in the day, Jim Jordan, U.S. Rep Jim Jordan, revealed that an unnamed whistleblower disclosed documents showing an FBI unit wanted agents to use counterterrorism measures against parents who criticize local school boards. Specifically, the unit wanted agents to use a so-called threat tag in this case. So I could send you the article, but that's just like one example. Again, I just wanted you to know that I wasn't just taken out of my behind. So
that does sound kind of insane, actually. Wow.
Yeah, and look.
Whoa, hold on.
Oh.
Hold on. I'm gonna bring it back in here because hold on. I'm not sure where he is right now. He wanted to say something, and then he said. And look, and he's not here. So while we're seeing what exactly is going on with Clive, I just want to ask everybody once again who is watching this, be sure to subscribe to the Break the Rules stream. We love you. We appreciate you. It is very important and fundamental that you subscribe right now and that you become a patron. If you go to patreon.com/breaktherules, become a patron, and we will love you and appreciate you forever and ever and ever. So right now, I am also adjusting the screen. As you can see, this is like 2 to 3 people, and now I'm going to adjust it to 4 to 5. I am still working this thing out, by the way, as far as what the screen ends up looking like. So you guys have to pardon me here. I'm still trying to figure this out. The screen is very big right now, too big, in fact. But again, I really appreciate the fact that Clive was able to come in here. Oh, here we go. Here he is. Hold on. Hey.
I know I do have to go. All I wanted to say is where I was going is, I'm look, in general, I'm very much an old school, have the civil libertarian attitude towards three-letter agencies is not your friends on the civil liberties front, and therefore to be scrutinized very carefully. I just want to make that clear before I leave.
I don't know. Absolutely. We're all in this together, Clive. And I really
I'm going to take off.
Take care, Clive. Thank you
guys.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, so as I'm adjusting this, some people have recommended that we also go to the Twitter, what do you call, those Twitter things where the Twitter people can converse with us, Twitter Spaces, that's it. So that may be a plan. I am not sure yet. Just give me a second here as I'm adjusting the monitors. This is all new to me. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 people who are on right now, which means I have to switch to 4 or 5, and... man, that is not working out. Okay, so anyway, what do you guys think of the conversation while I'm adjusting this thing?
We just got it out in the weeds, I think. I don't know.
What even is a gamer?
We met the anti-mold bug. Not only is there no cathedral, there's no mainstream media. What is the media?
Oh.
I mean, like, that kind of just got absurd at that point with the debating tactic of like, if we, we're going to have to debate the terms we're using, and it's
okay.
ridiculous.
So you bring up Moldbug. When I did my conversation with Moldbug, I was using the media as a shorthand for the press, and he was like, "DF, you don't mean the media, you mean the press," which I thought was really funny that it came full circle.
Nice. What would be the distinction there? Like, are we literally the written word?
So the press is, like magazines, newspapers, anything like a journalist would contribute to. And then media is movies, what we're doing now, podcasts, It's everything.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the press is probably, yeah. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I think that we didn't get into like what was the driving force of a movement like Gamergate and sort of politics on the internet, rather than just focusing on like the lore of like, no, it's about harassment. No, it was about ethics in gaming. No, it was like,
No, I think we were.
you know what I mean? Like, I
were
wanted more meta than that.
I think we were sort of touching on it, but we can touch on it right now. I mean, there's only so much that we could get into in that particular interview, but it is very interesting just to see the differing sides on that particular issue. But you can answer your own question, Gio. What do you think is the core, in your personal opinion?
I think that Gamergate was the first was like the first truly like millennial movement in terms of like, apart from other things. I think like what happened was there were a number of internet trends that coalesced, whether it was new atheism, like, you know, Daily Show consensus bullshit, like the news media becoming like Tumblr is obviously one of the biggest ones in terms of just cultural discourse and how like, for example, the 2012 writers' strike probably contributed to like journalists strip mining the internet for content. Just forum culture in general. You had a time where anonymity became less emphasized, and now you started to have the rise of e-celebrities. And so then from there, you have the perfect shelling point for a culture war that like became like such a huge international ground war, which is video games. Because video games, I think, is like one of the only industries of entertainment and art. Well, I mean, a debate whether it's an art form, but like, let's just say for its own sake, entertainment and art, it's one of the few that is still like largely controlled by a corporate apparatus that doesn't really have a truly like indie scene that is developed. It's starting to now, but I think that video games, because it requires such a huge commitment and such a huge monetary investment in terms of having developers and everything. It's not like film, it's not like music, certainly it's not like visual art where there's like, you know, outsider scenes. It's like video games are really like the heart of the culture industry now. And I think that's probably why you had like certain elements pushing it in that like culture war direction, because it's like very easily you can translate that into like, you know, sales. But
But what do you think, Bad Billy Pratt, as far as did we end up touching on the core of what exactly Gamergate is, or do you think that this could go further? Like, what would you say is missing from the conversation, if anything?
I mean, I think that Clive put up roadblocks wherever we could have went that was interesting. Clive wouldn't concede that there are not many male only spaces or spaces for, you know, men to kind of be comfortable with one another and like you were saying before, shoot the shit, like have that open kind of locker room vibe. It just doesn't exist anymore. And like, if he's not willing to concede to that, I think video games were the refuge of the incel. If you're not getting laid in college, you're playing, or college or high school, you're playing video games. And I think they saw Anita Sarkeesian and the other one as these intruders who were like kind of avatars for who the girls who weren't sleeping with them, or the girls who they felt bullied by, even if it was like in their own head, or just bullied by the fact that they weren't getting attention from them. And they saw these women as coming in and wanting to take away the only thing they really had. So like their safe space, since it can't be in real life, we're the virtual, we're in the video games. And
because they weren't coming inside, they found these women coming inside their space, coming in, they could.
Where are they coming, Gio?
But this was the point that I was.
There was a sexual tension between the feminists and the Gamergaters, in my opinion.
But this was the point that I brought up as far as the anonymous people who got interviewed, as Clive said, claiming to be supporting Trump in New York City, where it is interesting what he said, where on one hand, yes, they're being honest and forthright with a complete stranger, But it is important to point out that because they are complete strangers, it is almost like being anonymous in a way. It's not going to be somebody that would rat you out at work. It's not going to be somebody that would compromise whatever you do. So there's more of a chance to actually be honest with a stranger as opposed to being honest with somebody that you're in constant working with, which is why I did emphasize that there is this culture of self-censorship within New York City. And I'm not sure I agree with the idea that this is just like some isolated thing. I don't think it's limited to New York City at all. I think it's something that goes on in pretty much any urban area. And the way that I related back to Gamergate is that if there was this consensus that was established with certain pieces of media that journalists want to promote as opposed to others, I think this pattern has been seen in pretty much all media, and that's what people are very suspicious of. So when we ask the question of what exactly is not the, how did you phrase the default friend? Not the media, but journalists. Press. Yes. So when we're specifically talking about the press, people are very concerned about the power that the press has, especially today with big tech, to influence the public square to such an extent that people do end up getting slightly brainwashed. But at the same time, do you think that enough people today have, in a way, not to keep using these tired memes, but that they have woken up, the sheeple have woken up and would not take the press as seriously as they may have taken them before?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like it's night and day. I mean, who's really taking the press so seriously? Boomers.
Especially here in Canada, yeah. Boomers, yeah, that's the biggest hurdle, in my opinion, because they truly are the PSYOP generation in terms of television. But yeah, go ahead, Billy.
It's just amazing their allegiance to the TV, be it, Fox News or CNN, whichever their like preferences. It's like every time I have to have more patience for this. I really do. But every time I talk to my parents, it's like a different thing. Like, oh, this is going to happen. We have to buy paper towels, or you better get that, jab because like things are going to it's not yet. We're not there yet. It's almost like, one of those cults that keep promising something that's going to happen like
2 more weeks,
future.
2 more weeks.
And it's like, so it's like a different meme every day that they're just pumping out to these people. And the left used to be, if you recall, maybe 15 to 20 years ago, the left was the ones against the mainstream press. The left was like, you had Fahrenheit 9/11 by Michael Moore.
God, yeah.
But that was the whole gist of that was like the press, all of it is full of shit. All of it's full of shit. And now it's like that's completely forgotten. That's like memory hold.
But it's funny because Fahrenheit itself was like a glowy operation to like ward people off the real truth, which is like they fucking let it happen. And, oh, sorry, I can't say that on YouTube. Oh, no, I probably lose shit. No, I the demolition shit is bullshit. But I think like Fahrenheit 9/11 was sort of like the release valve to like get lefties to accept. I think like conspiracy theory is such a powerful force. I know like people like Keith Woods would say that the Contard mind is like plagued by conspiracy, but I think that conspiracy theories are so powerful that they have to like every generation have an acceptable way for like the left to embody them. So for 9/11, it was Fahrenheit. It was like, well, security state, they exploited it, but it wasn't like the real truth, which is like they let it happen. Or they did it. Like now then you have Russia, which is like the boomer retread, like the boomer left liberal retread. For millennials, you always have like conspiracies around like, I don't know, Fox News or something like that. Like it's some Jon Stewart crap. Like conspiracy theory is such a generative force that they needed it to become like more acceptable. Like we'll be like a leftist example of like on the internet would be like any like sort of like talk around like a Jesus camp type of like, fucking conversion therapy.
Oh, book banning is the current topic.
There you go. Mouse.
Yeah.
One district decides that Mouse isn't the select Holocaust book, and they're going to have another Holocaust book. It's just like Mouse is, for whatever reason, risque. Is it or is it not? I don't know. I did read.
Did you see the one viral thread where the one woman of the particular ethnicity was? Well, my hat's too large for her ethnicity. talking about how Mouse, like how the boy in the pajama, what's the pajama book?
Bananas
like
in pajamas?
No, the boy in the striped pajamas.
Oh.
Yeah, like how it's the perfect Holocaust book. I'm just remembering now that AXCX song, ha ha Holocaust, ha ha.
All right. I mean, look,
Hey Billy.
I haven't read Mouse yet.
Oh.
I don't exactly know what Mouse
No,
is
but
about
they
other than
said
the thing.
they banned it. It's like it's
No, I know there's like some nudity or some. Is there Mouse nudity in that?
There's violence and nudity.
Yeah, violence and nudity. Again, I don't think violence and nudity is as important to ban
But this
as.
author was saying that like they're not gonna. It's like sanitized. We can't blame white people enough for it. Like that's the whole. You know what I mean? There's a lot of racial impetus behind that thread, obviously. I mean, come on. But I think like with Mouse, it's like another like the banned books discourse is bullshit. Like if Stephen King wanted us to like read banned books, you got to go read what was this fucking stupid?
Wait, but was Mouse?
He would tell us to go out and buy fucking Miguel Serrano, go out and buy Julius Evola, go out and buy Sestri Devi. Is Stephen King just gonna let us read Sestri Devi now about how Hitler is like Krishna?
Oh lordy.
But
okay.
I'm getting off the rails now.
Yes, well, speaking of off the rails, I do want to do the Twitter space as well, because I think that there are people out there like maybe Black Sage D who have certain.
Before we get to that, I wanted to ask Catherine about. We didn't get to it. The discourse around the fandom thing, and do you think that Gamergate was sort of like was a model of like how fandom is such an integral part of like culture and politics nowadays?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in a bunch of different ways. I think like probably in the least obvious way is that people think that if you're fandom controlled, that means it's going to be a lot of different people. But actually, when media properties and corporations are looking at fans, they're looking at super fans, because those are actually like a small number of people are actually spending the most money and they're the most engaged. So you want that group to keep buying. You don't want the big mass that might dip in and dip out. So I guess like the argument maybe could be made that like the feminist faction is they're influencing the press, which is super fans influence the press, but they also influence media properties. And they're not, there's certainly like more teen boys playing video games and just men in general than there are women who are super passionate about it, especially the particular kinds of video games that gamers play. Like when you say gamer, it's nothing to do with mobile gaming or like what, Stardew Valley, that's bullshit. That's just a separate category. But yeah, it's a prelude to, we're going to pay attention to the super fans. We're going to pay attention to the people who are small in number, but we think are going to be the most influential and spend the most money, which who knows why they would, we would think it's women in this case, but.
Right. Well, women are natural consumers. I mean, that's...
But how many people are going to be spending money on, like with the cell phone games, Candy Crush, so on and so forth? I think a lot. I think like this casual market is going to be people being pay-pigged out of so much money just because they're used to having these various impulses light up in their heads. And
Well, I believe the casual market is kind of hinged on microtransactions, where all of those mobile gamings are the same. Outside of the Candy Crushes, it's like you could do some things in it, and then it will tell you can't do another thing for 2 hours. But if you want to do another thing right now, you could pay $1. And I think that's how like kids will get like super hooked on it, and then like steal their parents' credit card to like, to do more of these microtransactions.
Well, that's kind of like getting the various cigarettes from your parents after seeing a Joe Camel commercial on, that used to be the old way. And I do think that video games, in a way, are the new cigarettes and have been for a long time. Isn't that what they said? Like sitting is the new smoking? And especially if we're talking about VR, I think there's a tremendous amount of abuse that could go on when you have these things that are strapped onto you. Pretty soon we're gonna have a little hose that they could just like put on your penis, and so you could just like pee out, and another like pipe that goes up your ass, and you could poop out.
That Robert Duvall movie, that dystopia. What was it called? It was a bunch of the numbers. God, something. It was like a number code. The title of the film. I can never remember it. But he was like basically in this subterranean base where it was like this dystopian society where they have like the jerk off machines and this various other somas. And then he goes to the top and he finds that like they actually were living underground. That it was like in the top, like the world became like more like taken over by nature. I forget the title of that film, but I think like I mean the VR. There was a story the other day. I know that I have to like resist my like latent manosphere like reactionary impulse to be like, oh my god, they're fucking demonizing men again. But there was this story that apparently already in the metaverse there are like AI avatars of women that are kind of like in Japan they have like virtual girlfriends where the men were like sadistically like threatening them to like unplug them and erase their memory, and they're like, no, please don't. And it's sort of like a sexual sadist type of thing that's going on in the VR. And I remember like it became a viral tweet, this news article, and I'm like, holy shit, that's the future
I
right
think
there.
wasn't that a real woman? I mean, if we're talking about the same thing, wasn't that an actual woman claiming that she went into the metaverse and was like groped, like her avatar was groped?
There was that, but there was another one where oh my god, Wyatt is back. There was another one where basically they were like they had like an AI simulator of a girlfriend, and they were like teasing them by being like, I'm gonna pull you off, and they're like begging, like, no, no, no. It's like I was really fucked up. It was just it was one of those things.
I don't think VR is going to take off until you could look at your phone while having the headset on. And how no one has like thought of this, like it needs a front camera. I mean, people
they do have front cameras.
Until it's amazing that TikTok is as successful as it is because you can't multitask while you use it. But anything where you can't also multitask, then you're fucked.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, look at the BTR stream, for instance. Right now, we are streaming on Instagram, still apparently, as well as YouTube, as well as DLive, Twitch, Facebook. What else? What else we got? Oh, and the Odyssey, of course. And now we're going to be transitioning after some conclusive talks here. If you guys are interested in also being here, all it really takes, by the way, is for you could still keep the webcam on here, or the avatar on here. All you have to do is go on your Twitter app on your phone and go into the Twitter space and speak into the space, because I use an emulator for the Twitter space. So that way you're still going to be here in spirit on the screen, but you're also going to be on the screen inside of the little emulator. So that's a recent thing I started doing, and it's pretty successful since it also gets a lot of people's input on this particular conversation. But I do eventually want to do a virtual reality break the rules stream if you guys are interested.
Oh my God. We kind of had half of one. Remember with what was his name?
Oh yes, I know who you're talking about.
Red Badger.
No, Red Badger. No,
Red Fox.
No,
Red
no, it's Pikapedi, that's it. You remember he had the furry yellow avatar, and
it's a red panda. Yeah. That's
no, that's Haka says. But yeah, technically
Haka says, he was in a VR set while he came on.
Sort of. I mean, it's still.
Yeah, it was a VR set.
Yeah, it's still being formulated. But yeah.
Did you see that other story, by the way? Default, you saw this one. Oh, by the way, your friend Going Godward got suspended for some reason. I don't know why. She never posted anything. I think
That's weird.
I think she was talking about school curriculum or something. So I'm guessing someone probably brigaded her. By the way, another good friend of mine got suspended, Parallax Optics, because he mentioned a naughty no word in front of James Lindsay. So I wonder if James Lindsay is probably report F-slur. I wonder. Anyways, did you see that VR thing where the husband said that, or rather, was it a boyfriend or no? It was an actual husband that wanted to have sex with his wife while wearing VR, but he's like through VR imagining another anime girl or whatever, kind of like like in Blade Runner. What was that called? Blade Runner
14. Oh, okay.
1488? No, Blade Runner 449.
I think 2049.
2049.
There we go.
Where like his VR girlfriend is like, they take this prosty who has like a Neuralink hookup, and the prosty, and they like put her in like so he can see the avatar of his GF, but he's doing this prosty at the same time. I mean, it's kind of like, then you know what his justification was well, you know, when you have sex with someone, then you imagine another like porn star or whatever, and she's like, what the fuck? Like,
Oh, is that Jordan Peterson?
no,
That
I'm just
voice
like
sounded
pretending
like
to-
yeah.
Well, I mean, Jordan Peterson is a beta male type of voice, but I mean, like, so yeah, default, you saw that clearly, right? Like, it was. I'm not
Yeah, I
giving
mean,
it
it
justice.
reminded me of like a recurring conversation that the personality girl and I would have on After the Orgy, which is like, if your boyfriend's imagining sleeping with someone else while you guys are being intimate, should he tell you? And I mean, the obvious thing is no, but unfortunately there was a person who we both knew who vehemently thought it was yes. And that would be a frequent argument. That way, it's like a weird recurring bit on the show. I mean, look, I'm sure everyone does it, but it's just like, it's one of those things that like you keep to yourself. I feel like a lot of things are fine as long as no one knows a thing about it.
Yeah, that's probably true. But this is like next level. Like the guy is in a VR headset, and it's like you're basically just like a human fleshlight at that point. It's just like, I don't know.
Well, it's another layer of Plato's cave.
Billy, what do you think about this?
Plato's Goon Cave.
Have you imagined someone else during,
I mean, at some point.
God, why am I asking that question? Holy fuck.
But who would
You
go
wanna
to
out
a
Billy.
prostitute to imagine their girlfriend? Doesn't that seem backwards? Am I missing something here?
No, this was his girlfriend or wife. It's just that he was in the VR pod with an anime girl or some other porn star, like while they're having sex.
Wasn't that? I feel like I saw that as a viral post on Twitter.
It was.
Where,
Yeah.
Oh, is that what we're talking about?
It was from a Reddit thread. Yeah, that was what we're talking about. Yeah.
Right. It's funny because I that very same day I posted something else from Reddit where a man was complaining that his dying wife.
That one, holy shit!
And I just feel like they're kind of mirrors of each other. And
they are. One is like female sociopathy, and one is male sociopathy.
And the one for men
explain
is
this
like,
one. People don't know.
Okay, so a man had a dying wife, and he's posting to Reddit very upset about something.
9 months to live.
9 months to live, and she comes to him and says, well, I love you so much, but I only have 9 months to live, and you don't fill my needs sexually. And I had this partner from the past who was the best sex I've ever had. So can I have sex with him one more time? That's the story. Now, there are many different interpretations we could have of this story, but the story was that it was just one more time, and she's asking permission.
Oh, God, that's tragic. Oh.
My take was that she had been doing it. She'd been doing it the whole time. And
there you go. Probably.
I think that because of the disease, she would have like less autonomy. Like he's probably more on top of where she is. I doubt she still has a job who's working with 9 months to live. So he's probably on top of where she is. And she wants to continue to kind of cheat. But now the stakes are if she gets caught, I mean, she may just literally die alone. Like literally now she's going to die alone.
That was the role of Tomasi take is like, if you say that to me, then how about he takes care of you while you're dying for the last few months? And it's like, piss off. In other words, that's weird because they both strike at a particular form of like malfeasant male and female sexual longing that hasn't been properly sublimated. Like in the one sense, the woman is like finding this extreme circumstance of like, well, like, I don't know, not that I know anything about good sex, but I mean like, I guess maybe it's true, but then it's like,
well, Gio, you're an artist, so the intersexual power is in every work that you create.
But what is good sex, Lev? What is good sex? Cannot a man verbally learn, like, can the husband just
Good,
ask
good
her,
sex
like, what do
is
you want?
good sex.
Why am I
is-
not bad?
Good sex is sex without a condom. I mean, it just okay.
No, obviously, if she has 9
I
months,
mean,
to
I
live,
think
yeah,
Billy's right. I think she's probably just fucking this other dude the whole time.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she
Probably.
needs to, like, I don't, maybe it's not even about getting caught. It's sort of just about, like, mentally justifying it to herself
Yeah,
before
before
she
you-
dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on
For
that,
those in the chat, what is good sex? For those in the chat, please describe this to me.
yeah.
What?
Oh,
On
I
that,
think that
yeah.
it just says something to me that the kind of male inverse is just
Yeah.
that's the pathetic one. And that's like kind of remember, like we live in a sexual utopia for women, right? Sexual utopia in power. The male fantasy is to have something virtual, right? So no
Yeah.
feelings. I mean, it's gross. Okay. Like you shouldn't be doing it, but it still comes from a place, in my opinion, of like innocence. Whereas like, she's like, F you, I'm going to stab you in the heart. I'm going to, on the
Before
way
I
out,
die.
I'm going to tell you that you never, satisfied me. And then I
For a
need
man,
someone
that
else
is
to do it.
devastating too. Like, not to like, I know she's dying, but like for a man, that probably is fucking devastating to say that. Like, well, you didn't satisfy you. You didn't bring me to, to quote Scott Steiner, to the mountaintop, to Nirvana. Like,
Yeah, those would
giving
be
her the Steiner recliner.
those would be the last thing the wife would write
TP,
before
your
she
wife.
passes away.
Well, you're in hospital screaming in pain. Your wife Kimberly screaming my name, because for people to know, he was married to the top Nitro girl, Kimberly Page, Diamond Dallas Page. Yeah,
Wow.
for real. But they divorced like in the mid 2000s. Yeah.
So I'm going to be transitioning right now into the Twitter space, everybody. I want to make sure that my instructions are clear to Default Friend and Billy Pratt. Do you know what to do?
I have this open in my Twitter, in the browser in Twitter. So no, I'm not really sure what to do.
Oh,
Can
okay.
I just...
Do you have the Twitter app?
Well, yeah, I'm in the Twitter app, and I clicked on your link in our DM. And that's how I ended up here.
Yes. Okay. As long as you're not using a browser, as long as you're in the actual Twitter app, then you're able to use this no problem. And Catherine, same thing. So as long as you have the app, not the browser, but the actual app, it'll allow you to go in there and to talk. So I'm going to start the space right now. Nothing much really changes as far as whatever's happening here. But Gio, let's read out some names right now while I go through the
All right, I can't
transition.
see the space. Oh yeah, now I see the space. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, it's here.
All right. So names. I don't know. Let's go through it. David Doe, King Salmonfish. My ex hacked all of my senses one time. The bitch is dangerous. I was straight up fucked up the afterwards. Holy crap. Never marry a Wiccan GF. Algon, Matthew W, Oscar Toe, Seraphim Goose, who is a mod of ours, who is a Janny of ours, Dagbreaker, Moral Outrage Prophet, Bing da Bingo, Vicious Need, Howardrell. That name kind of reminds me of the guitarist for Perfect Circle, Billy Howardell, but it's Howardrell. No Name, Girly Voice, BTR crowdfunded love doll for Geo. Oh, yeah, get him out of here, engineer! Get him out of here! Lord Candy, Subject to Change, QT Pie, Matthew W, Cyber Ninja Zero, Baltic, Ralph Dude 7. We got I said Cutie Pie, Ding Dong,
Ding dong.
Fallen Student. The acrylic name I can't say, but that's probably a troll.
No, you mean Bulatus Matov?
Yeah. Biff Vonderhoo. That's a good name. Michael. We got Michael.
Who?
We got WebM Aristocrat. We got Algon. We got King Salmon. I'm scrolling up. Oh, I think I saw Noan too. Shout out to Noan. We should get Noan back on the show. Nathan Wagner. You could have had someone base like Jit, but we got to read that super chat after. We have a few super chats. Firewalker 93. Anger Warts, geotext adventures, roguelikes, and custom maps for older gamers don't suffer that same problem. Yeah, that's true. Hajtaro, Hagataro, yeah. Vicious Gandhi, Canamandin. We got Bubble Gut Dark Split. Bubble Glut Dark Split. That's pretty cool. Fraser. We got Fraser. And finally, we have David Martell or Bizarchives. Go and subscribe to Bizarchives. He's a great podcaster. Peter Shrinkage. Peter Shrinkage. There you go. That's final name. That's all the shout outs. Now we're going to transition to so I'm going to get off and then I will Yeah.
Yes. So while we are transitioning right now, man, OBS is not behaving as I would want it to. Everything is all over the place, but it doesn't matter. We're going to be transitioning, so let me just pull up that new window capture window, and we should be good. So here we go. Everybody, once again, who is listening to this, be sure to subscribe to the Break the Rules stream.
Put us on the thing, eh?
Yeah. 1 second. Let me just see over here. Let's see. Okay, Nox Player. Where's Nox Player? There it is. Perfect. Okay, here we go. Everybody.
So do we leave StreamYard?
You mute yourself on StreamYard, and instead you go into the Twitter app, and I am going to lead everybody into the promised land in the Twitter app right now. So I see I have a couple of requests over here. So here we go. So Gio, I am putting you in as the co-host, and we got default friend already here. You are speaking. So Billy Pratt, you are the only one who is left right now who is not who's not in. And also, let's see if my audio works.
All right. Can people hear me?
Yes.
All right. Let's make default a speaker.
All right, I need to get my phone.
Oh, default is a speaker.
So I don't.
Okay.
So my phone doesn't die.
I want to make sure that I. Hello, can you hear me? Let's see.
Lev, you there, bud?
Yes, hold on. My mic is on, but I cannot speak. I have a mouth, and I cannot speak. So you guys hear me here. You guys don't hear me there. So I'm gonna close this. I gotta do one.
No,
more.
I can't hear you so far.
I know. Hello, can you hear me? No.
Billy, you there, bud?
Yep. Hey, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
Lev, you there, bro?
I am, and I'm not. So hold on. Give me a second here. So.
Oh yeah, he's just setting things up. Sorry, I just got this debate with fucking Carl's bad today about cultural Marxism. We were talking about Gamergate, and we were talking about gamer culture, and we were also talking about just the medium in general and the future of it. And I think like we had this journalist on from the New York Times, and it's sort of like I felt like got bogged down in the weeds of just like talking about the harassment narrative. But I wanted to like get people's input. But before that, we were talking about that story of the Reddit post of the woman who wanted to sleep with her old boyfriend before she died, and something like that. I don't know. It's really. Do you think that there is some kind of some kind of animus thing going on when it came to Gamergate? Like, do you think that there was some kind of like Oedipalization of it, for lack of a better term? I don't know. I think like there was some kind of the politics of sexuality. I think were probably ripe within Gamergate. It's obvious. But what do you think?
I mean, I think that is the whole joke when people would kind of poke fun at the ethics in journalism, because it's just such a desperate way to kind of save some kind of face with it or save credibility. Yeah, I mean, they didn't like the idea of a girl coming in and using sexuality to kind of accomplish her end. I heard way back when that Depression Quest was a dumb game. I think that's the idea, and it was getting good reviews from people. She was trading sex. I mean, it just sounds so ridiculous. She was trading sex to get these reviews.
Yeah, five guys.
Yeah, and I mean, was that even worth it? Like that seems like kind of low end prostitution.
I think like there's probably Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, it's just like how much did she make from Depression Quest? How much could she possibly have made?
Not a lot, but I think, I mean, in terms of infamy, I think like Zoe Quinn is such like an easy like household name of that era. But I think like I don't know, it's really quite strange. I think like it's I think it had, like, again, I was saying on stream, like it had a lot to do with the sort of apparatus of like what the internet in general was metastasizing into in terms of like this apparatus of hyperreality finally being able to converge on the real. And now politics is such a unique, different thing, that it's like you can't really predict it. And as much as we degrade it as like, this is just stupid like culture war nonsense, like define culture, define war, I think like there is something to the fact that a lot of these trends we're seeing are very much real and have an impact on people. And I don't know, I think like now that I've sort of gotten out of the manosphere type of like, my way of looking at it, I think that there was partially a case to be made in terms of like, representation. But at the same time, I think like when you get bogged down, I think the problem in general was the Gamergate creating a bunch of like e-celebs that had the same content that like anti-SJW, like here's what Francesca Ramsey is saying on BuzzFeed today. It's like it's so low,
That definitely came out of Gamergate, but I mean, if you kind of looked at like how much of that came out of Disney Star Wars, I mean, I think more.
Yeah, true.
There's just as much, and those are, man, those channels really milk that content. It's kind of unreal. Like, but I mean, doesn't it all just come down to people finding different avenues to exploit content? Clive was talking about how horrible the death threats or sexual harassment, but I mean, did they not make so much money from that? I mean, that amplified Anita Sarkeesian to such a great degree. Like, would she have really had that many patrons pumping her money if they didn't feel that she was this kind of like Jesus Christ female figure of getting like destroyed by the evil white male gamers? Probably not.
Yeah, true.
I mean, like,
the thing is, it's always both, right? Like it's so painful when you're going through it, but then it does lift your profile a lot. And I think like the thing that you're not allowed to do is have the self-awareness to be like, yeah, it really sucked and was really scary, and it's probably still a little scary, but I wouldn't have the career I have without, haters are fans too. It's stereotypical, but it's true.
That level of nuance is just man, get out of here, Default. We don't like that kind of nuance here. But yeah, I mean, absolutely.
But I wanted to go into like what you talk about on your Substack with like the model of fandom. Like, what do you mean by fandom? Why is it so important? And what are the things that, like, you're viewing fandom as like a political model almost, or a cultural political model? Like, what is it that is so powerful about fandoms?
So basically, like, I think people call it like a new religion a lot, and I don't think that's true because there's
all right. Sorry, I have to do this.
Nature to it. It's basically
I gotta restart
like
it.
religious levels of devotion, if not like religious levels of like being woven into your life, with like a corporate influence. And then there's other things that like define fandom too, like for you to be considered a fan of something, you need to be like in dialogue with the work, whatever it is, and you also need to be you need to be participating in it. So making fan art, writing fan fiction, role playing, there's all sorts of these works that make someone a fan. And I what we miss is that there's a lot of stuff that we think is just your regular podcast, or we think is just it's just tweeting, or it's just this, that, but it's actually, if you really think about it, it's like actually role playing, or it's actually fan fiction. We just don't call it that.
Hello. There we go. Now you can hear me.
Okay.
Yes. So hopefully the people who are watching this were able to go properly through the transition. What I had to do is I had to close the app, open it back up again, but luckily nobody missed anything that Catherine was speaking about because I was using the trusty phone over here put it. Oh, I'm probably really loud right now. I put my trusty phone next to the microphone, so they were able to hear her really well. So anyway, let's keep going. So as far as the conversation that we had with Clive, like we mentioned during the stream, I think a lot of things were touched on. To disagree with Gio here, but I also agree with what Bad Billy Pratt was saying, is that there were certain roadblocks from which nothing we could really, there wasn't really much that we could do here. I also want to bring in, let's see, a couple of people here, but before that, anybody who, let's see, Mason, did you have a chance to listen? I want to get some input from some of the people who listened to the actual stream today, so let me know. Raise your hands. I hardly ever call people to do that, but raise your hands if you listened to the stream today and if you have anything you would like to say. Let's see. I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Yeah,
right.
I mean anyone in general, like in the chat, who is listening to this. Have all of you listened to the stream, and wants to say something? Just the only prerequisite is that you have to follow either me or Lev, because we've had a bad. We had this one, this Black Israelite on that was Fed posting once. I made that mistake.
Yes. Oh, King Salmonfish. King Salmonfish's got the hand up here.
Yeah,
so
he was in the chat actually in the stream.
Yeah,
so
there we go. So speak up. Let me know what you think.
All right, is this working? Because
yes,
it's kind of been giving me some trouble.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
All right. So I've been playing video games like my whole life. I only stopped recently in the sense of like I'm not playing the Xbox. I'm just playing real life, you know. But I think, what was the dude's name? Clive. Yeah, I think he. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that guy, because it's like, you know, what Gamergate was you know, just a whammon hate fest. Like, that's what they accomplished. It's like, no, I don't think that's even close to a correct analysis of the situation. I mean, you're talking a community of people that are incredibly sophisticated at problem solving, and like pattern recognition, and like the impact that has had on culture is not at all insignificant. It's evolved into full blown like advanced military tactics and shit. Like, it's not, I don't know. And then, you know, just a singular female present and the guy just kind of implodes. That was kind of my take.
Let's see, I like that take. I'm also going to try to transition once again, closing this and opening it back up again, because I think that there is some interference in the audio. But anybody else, speak up. Let me know what you think. So, okay, so far we don't have any new people coming in here, but back to, oh, we have Quay. So, Quay, what's up, my brother? Let me know what you think.
Good to see you, Lev. I unfortunately didn't get to hear the stream. I was at the gym and kind of got back just as the space was starting. But it's good to see you, Default. Good to see you as well. And I'm just kind of here to listen for now. I'll chime in if anything occurs to me based on anything you guys say.
I'm actually. I think I'm gonna pop. So hungry. I need to go eat dinner. My boyfriend warmed stuff up and I could smell it, and now it's like I just need to go.
What is your boyfriend making, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, right, Default. Well, it was lovely.
All right, Default. Thank you so much for coming in.
I'm actually gonna copy Default and also pop off to have dinner. I do get up very early for work, so this is like a late night for me already. So, guys, it was great being on, and I will hopefully be on again soon.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to having you on. It was a great pleasure as always. I'm not sure, by the way, where Gio went, so I'm sending him a message once again. This is very weird. Guys, you're going to have to wait a bit here to see what exactly is going on. Add speakers.
Yeah, I see Lev's thing sounds like he's talking, but I can't hear him.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Oh, here we go. Can you hear me right now? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. So I'm not really sure what is happening with Geo right now. Oh, and look at that. PCSS at default friend straight up ignoring Lev's question. Yeah, that's right. I want to know what exactly she had to eat. And, well, maybe later on I will have the pleasure of finding out. So the problem with a lot of these apps, since right now I'm using this thing called Nox Player, it is a Android emulator. This is the only way that you're able to get this stuff on your computer and be able to emulate the Twitter space. Is that I don't want to do a disservice to the people who are here, so I want to actually make sure that while they're in the space, while they're watching the stream, they're not going to hear the double talk, because there was an echo-like effect that was going on when I loaded this up the first time. I'm loading it up the second time just to see what happens. Once again, all the people who are watching this right now on the stream, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you watching. Here, I'm going to add a couple of more people in here, and I want to see if I can get Black Sage D on, because he retweeted this thing. And anyway, I'm going to put my mic back on and close it here. So here we go. All right, let's see, is my mic on? Yes, it is. So now you guys could hear me. I hope that there's not going to be any echo anymore. So let us hear from some more people here. Let's go back to King Salmonfish for a moment, since you're right here. Any other thoughts on the future of gaming? What exactly you anticipate happening with the various cultures, or I'd say like the two dominant cultures, if we're talking about the people who are more... how do I say it? More troublemaking, and the people who want it to be a bully-free space. So, King Salmonfish, let me know what you think.
I've been actually having this kind of discussion, and it ties into transhumanism and just like advanced technology, because things are going to progress almost certainly. So the weird example that I keep using is kind of the cult classic Fooly Cooly. So you have Medical Mechanica uses all these like robots and stuff to just kind of iron out all the wrinkles of existence. And obviously they're like a giant intergalactic evil corporation type thing. But the reason this is relevant is because people always seem to have this dystopian view of technology, like we're all just going to end up in like some terrible Matrix scenario or something like that. Whereas the message in Fooly Cooly is kind of like, one of the robots of Medical Mechanica gets like by kind of almost a freak accident, sort of hijacked, like broken and hijacked. And like, it's like, how do you take the machines? Like, how do you take the things and make them punk rock and badass and like romance and like, love and fucking just rock and roll and like the power of the pirate king that just doesn't give a shit and can't be denied? Like, how do you take these things and essentially use them for something dope and cool? And it definitely applies a lot to this, no bullying versus like overly aggressive, and like trying to find this, like, what actually is functional, for like just literally just honestly kind of perpetuating the same problem over and over again. Strangely, because you just are trying to keep the world alive in a sense, and then people are just going to be people. So you're going to have that kind of psychological dichotomy play itself out, ad infinitum throughout history.
How much do you think the people being people is people being people as they always were versus people who have been psyoped to act in a certain way? Or do you think that in general human nature is strong enough that they're going to be able to withstand any psychological fuckery that'll come their way, even though there may be certain formative years, like when you're in college and a little bit later on when, like that old Churchill quote, how if you are young and a conservative, you have no heart, and so on and so forth?
So I've also been doing a little bit of work on this, and one of my strange conclusions about human nature and psychology is it's kind of dark, but the truth is, like, reality will just beat the living shit out of you until you get it and like change your behavior, usually at rock bottom, or you will die. Also, there's a horrifying alternative, which is that you live for an extended period of time in hell, which does happen. But I am just kind of indicating that objective reality has its like absolute authority and power over everything, in such a way that like you sort of just have to get with it, and things kind of just are what they are and always have been. But yes, the psyop thing, I just made a video today, but I'm going to re-record it. And part of the thing that I was getting at is how the forces of darkness are not necessarily as powerful as people would assume that they are, because their power is derived from an embodiment of some truth. So like the mechanisms by which they use their power requires them to act truthfully in regards to those things, even if they act deceptively in other manners. Like deception is a thing, which is a kind of true facet of reality, and they have to be honest in order to deploy those mechanisms. So like there's a fundamental kneecapping of the forces of darkness, because they can only embody the truth to a certain extent, and thus cannot deploy more powerful methods. So I don't know.
Interesting stuff. I don't know either. I think that people are eventually going to get to the point where there's going to be a couple of people who end up not succumbing to the technological malaise, and instead will make sure that their kids aren't going to be fully immersed in these various apps, VR things, and then there's going to be everybody else who's going to be stuck in the matrix, so to speak, and it's not great. I mean, I like people being able to express themselves, but being stuck in the matrix, though, question is, what are people going to be spending their time doing? So for most of humanity, if right now people get stuck on these apps, where do you think they're going to be inside the VR world?
I mean, have you ever seen Second Life?
I've seen it, but keep in mind, Second Life is not most people. Like, people have to find out about something like Second Life and go in there. I'd say there is a bit of a, or at least in the classic sense of the internet, there was a bit of gatekeeping when it came to Second Life. Not to say that everybody's there a fucking genius, but still, that was a different generation. But do you think that it implies to what's going to happen in the future?
Well, I'm more speaking to like how a human being operates and perceives reality in the real world versus the kind of almost unbounded kind of I don't know, it's weird. Like you can do weird things that you can't do in reality, and like how does that affect your perception of like what is moral or whatever. And I guess that does get into this thing with the metaverse, where the first thing people do is start abusing each other. And we hear all kinds of stories coming out immediately, and it's because like, well, I mean, what ethics are there? Like, I mean, is it wrong to abuse some virtual avatar, that, especially if it's an artificial intelligence? Like, people don't, it's just not the case that most people spend all their time thinking about the advanced ethical nuances of what they're doing. And like a lot of it requires experimental behavior because we don't know. Nobody knows, I think the artificial intelligence thing has actually been explored to some extent, and you probably shouldn't abuse any kind of entity to the extent that you're capable of doing that. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I do think that you're probably correct, that there's just going to be a certain amount of people that end up like in the Matrix, or like just overcome by all kinds of shit that's just going to be terrible for them, and I think that's kind of just been the same story that's been told quite a lot throughout history. But once again, even with the like the metaverse or any kind of other virtual reality or Matrix, there's no particular reason in my mind that it would have to be 100% a negative thing. Like, why couldn't some of these things be good? And why couldn't, like, if somebody's trapped in the Matrix, you really do get into like the, glitches in the Matrix, or like Morpheus comes and gets you out kind of phenomena. Like, that stuff happens because I think Baudrillard wrote about how like the simulacrum ends up trying to compete with objective reality for the deepest part of your mind and your perception. But ultimately, my take is that objective reality will always win, because any matrix or simulation is just a subset of objective reality. And like, so are our minds. Like, even if you are in a delusional state, there are objective mechanisms by which that can functionally exist. So I don't know. I'm hyper optimistic actually. So that's my take.
Mm.
I don't know if I'm as optimistic as you are. I forget who it was. I think I might have read about this
Oh, a
somewhere
little
on
closer to the mic,
Twitter.
by the way. A little closer to the mic.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not nearly as optimistic, I don't think. I think I read this in something Rod Dreher wrote, but he was talking to a friend who was like a philosophy professor who would use Andre Nozick's example of the experience machine, where like if you could be wired into this machine that'll give you all the experiences of life, but you won't be in any danger or anything. Like, would you do that? And this professor said he stopped using that example on his students because all of his college age now students are just like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you? Like they don't understand why you wouldn't get in the experience machine. Like they don't understand why there's some kind of virtue or value in being directly connected to objective reality.
Do you think that's also connected to kids going out? I don't know. Is that meme true? Are kids going outside less? I mean, talking like a 90s boomer, where I used to remember always going outside and playing tag and all that. Like, if you combine the fact that these appendages, I'm not going to say the M word because, I don't trust Twitter at all, but these appendages are being worn right now by little kids, and eventually they're going to something wrong is going to happen with them as far as their recognition of what facial expressions are. And what does that mean for the generation that is, I mean, this is a good time for Gio to step in here. What does it mean, Gio, for the generation of, I don't know if it's Zoomers now, I think it's like Gen Alpha, for the Gen Alphas who do not see a human facial expression that often other than their parents? And do you think that that's going to create some kind of a crisis when they approach adulthood, or is this overblown?
No, yeah, it definitely will. Did Billy and Default leave? I had to step out. I had to go to the washroom.
Yes, right
Did they
now,
leave, or?
yes, they did leave, but you are here and I am here, and we're going to have a couple of more people stepping in here to speak.
Well, I actually kind of just maybe I'll stay for maybe 15 minutes or so because I just we're snowed in, so I have
Oh,
to,
yeah.
I have to go somewhere. But no, I would say that you were talking about the children of the Coof. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I was talking about the children of the Coof.
Children of the Corn. Great. They played that with Ice Cube during the Family Values tour at Corn. I think that it definitely will have long-term impact. I know people like Nemitz, not to call him out, but we're like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like a lot of the discourse around kids being resilient, I think is a huge cope. I think that it's true kids are resilient, but at the same time, we are inflicting massive hypochondriacal psychic damage upon the youth. And I think that in the future, the trauma that we're creating now will carry through, and we're going to basically create a generation of neurodivergent children or who will grow up into adults. And I think that, but in the same token, I think that perhaps they're going to rebel in the future against the biosecurity state if they find some other thing, whether it's like climate lockdowns or whatnot. I think that perhaps they're going to be even more radicalized than ever because Zoomers just are basically, in my opinion, spiritually, their consciousness has been ceded to the millennials. They basically are the perfect reification of the millennial in a lot of ways. And I think that Gen Alpha probably does have a chance to be truly the first quote unquote reactionary generation. But because I don't know, I think they have to rebel against the rampant spiritually dead consumerism of their Generation X parents. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I think that they're going to probably look back upon their childhood as wow, we were basically robbed because their older millennial and Zoomer siblings are going to be well, when I went to school, we didn't have to do all of this. It's so I think that yeah, it's definitely something. The people that are the journalists that are saying kids are resilient is you could say that to you could say that to legit child abuse. Well, kids are resilient. It just to me it's just so disingenuous. But yeah.
Well, there was that recent professor. I don't remember his name, but you remember he, when people started looking up all the things that he wrote, every single take that he had was so controversial. almost like he was trolling. You know the one I'm talking about, right, Gio?
Oh, the. Do you mean the black
No.
studies guy,
No, not the
or
Black
the other
Studies
one?
guy.
That was a great read though.
Oh,
That
the
was
guy who was a map, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Oh yeah, I loved it. It was like I said it's kind of like eFluxus, like Fluxus magazine, where they would have like these art boxes full of writings, and a lot of it was like automatist writing, where like the surrealists used to do that. It kind of reminded me of that, but no, you mean the professor who was like at one time he like was for the cheese pizza ism, but also he hated women's rights or something like that.
Yeah.
That guy,
Yes.
the guy with the curly hair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I
guy
know
with
what
the
you're talking
curly
about. I
hair,
forget his
exactly.
name.
Yeah. Yeah, he was all over the. But again, it's like when somebody is so all over the place everywhere, is it a matter like do you take it seriously, or at that point it's like okay, this person is just a performance artist of the highest degree, and we got to fund them more. Like what exactly is the consensus here?
Yeah,
But
I don't know. I
oh,
mean,
go
I
ahead,
don't.
Quay.
I know we like. I know this came up in the stream that I did a little bit, but like, I definitely have a limited amount of patience for like being contrarian just for the sake of it. You know, like I. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that tends to lead you to a weird place where you just feel like you have to one up everyone else and say like the most taboo thing possible, which sometimes that's you're having a genuine kind of prophetic witness by doing that, but it's not guaranteed that just because what you're saying is taboo, it's also somehow brave or true.
Hmm.
Like there's certain
Yeah,
things
true.
there's certain things you just shouldn't say, and I feel like if you're not particularly mature or discerning, you can't tell the difference between those things.
Hmm. But
We
wouldn't
have to endorse Hitler and violence, or else we're not authentic. So,
But yeah, I mean that is true. Where we do have a lot of people in the underground, whatever you want to call it, the 4chan crowd, that they are just like that. I mean that professor is like that too from the other side, but they're like it from that side. And there's not really anybody who comes in, except for Break the Rules, mind you, who comes in and is able to speak in detail about a lot of the yes, Gio, the de-radicalization. That's exactly what's going on. You're 100% right on that department. But what's wrong with that? What
no,
is?
no, I think like it's kind of amazing though. Well, oh, what's wrong with that? No, we need more radical. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, the problem I think is like it is kind of amazing. I know. I think it was Kobayashi Stan account that had the thread that became famous because it links to the actual work of this Michael Harris guy. It is kind of astounding
The hot
how.
dog eater.
Yeah. Oh, was it the hot dog? Yeah, the Michael Harris one was the manifesto, the 800-pager. Um, I think it's quite amazing though how like how did these people get through academia? How did he like have a professorship at Yale when he's like this crazy? Like I don't understand. Like how do they get
Well, I mean, like
PhDs? Like oh my god.
the guy who invented Kwanzaa, who is like a raving lunatic by any objective measurement, has like a Black Studies sinecure at some university. So it's
Oh
people
god.
who people who parrot ideologies that are useful tend to be rewarded for that with these sinecures, right? But apparently this Harris guy, I guess they have to like cancel classes in the philosophy department there every so often because he just calls in threats all the time.
I knew a professor like this, but like a way more tame version in the philosophy department. He would just like start beefing with the other professors, and
Philosophy professors are just generally insane too. Like I had one in
yeah,
my undergrad
yeah.
who like he had this like very unkempt hair and just always wore like sweatpants and like random hoodies from thrift stores and would like take naps on park benches around campus and like routinely get arrested by campus safety because they thought he was like a homeless man.
Oh my god, it's there was this one back. I went to okay, so basically my MA that I got my philosophy master's degree in. My philosophy department. It's a small university in Canada. and it's near the escarpment. Not to dox myself. Fuck it, who cares? I went to Brock University. It's pretty easy to look my name up. And it was basically started by a bunch of like ex hippies, the philosophy department that like couldn't get jobs anywhere else. Also, like a legit Tibetan monk started it. So we had this one professor who was a Nietzsche studies expert, and he was like a crazy hippie that like literally was like one of these like new age Christian people, but he was also into Nietzsche, and he's like, you know, Christ is love, and he like had orgies with his students because Christ is love. Like, I'm not joking. This like happened in the 70s and 80s, and like just like a bunch of weirdos just came forth. I was like very fortunate to have like a last like legit philosophy department that like our university decided to murder because now it's merged with the classics department. It's like some general humanities thing because it's like, you know, there's not enough funding for them. It's like it's so sad in a way. Like philosophy departments in the West are just like being systematically murdered as we speak, for good or for bad. I mean, a lot of it they did it to themselves, but I mean, it's sad in a lot of ways. I mean, yeah.
But you
Yeah,
also
who's that? There's. Oh, sorry.
no, go on.
I was just gonna say there's that famous essay. I forget who the philosopher who wrote it is, but there's that famous essay of just like why you shouldn't study academic philosophy, like by a pretty eminent philosopher.
Oh, was that
ContraPoints,
Schopenhauer on University, or was it someone else?
maybe I'm not sure. ContraPoints did a video on like academic philosophy and quotes the piece at length, which I don't like all of her is. I'm not. I don't remember how ContraPoints identifies. I don't like all of ContraPoints' stuff, but that was a pretty good video. And I'm not being mean. I legitimately don't remember.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But our
Um,
universities, you think, Geo, like I said, like what's the difference between Harvard and Yale today? Do you think that you were at the tail end of actual diversity in the universities, intellectually speaking, and now it's even further?
yeah, I
From,
literally was. I literally, because all the good people like they retired or left, and my supervisor, who was one of like the last like good like real philosophy professors, he like was the chair of the department at the time, but he fucking hated it. Like he despised it. He like is toning down now. I actually haven't talked to him in a while. If you look up Rohit Dalvi, he like was a visionary, right? But he just hated the system. Like he hated the way that like all their little political games. And yeah, I mean, from what I hear, my university's way worse now in terms of like the woke stuff. Like I had when I went and did my MA in politics, I'll give you a little story before I actually have to go. I have to eat dinner. But like yeah, and then I have a bunch of snow that is greeting me outside. So fuck. That's Canada, man. Trudeau strong and free. When I was in my politics MA, same university, which I maybe shouldn't have done that. I had like one of the few. She was the first woman to receive a political science in political philosophy doctorate in Canada. She was like the first, right? And she's if you look up Bradshaw, she's like very important in Canada, and she was like super cool, like super old school, like second wave feminist, and she would like always like get into it with my other supervisor, who was like a postmodernist from university. He like went to Berkeley and he went to University of Los Angeles and stuff, and so you find a job anywhere you go, right? So they will always get into it. But I remember she was talking about when she retired that the university department they don't have money for enough. Like my university, the political science department was known for what they call comparative politics because we had a bunch of like great people. Like one of them actually, if you look up, I shit you not, this guy is the wokest guy you'll ever find. I mean, our term of woke. His name is Juris Dreifeld. And Dreifeld, he was the top Sovietologist in Canada, but he's like super controversial because he's always talking about your people, Lev. I'm not shitting you. Like he like went to the Soviet Union. He was like he worked for CSIS, which is the Canadian like glow in the dark intelligence agency. But he like just kept talking about the your people, Lev. So he's like
good for
super
him.
controversial. Yeah, and he no, but he didn't hate them or anything. He would just talk about he was one of the only people in university that was still doing a course on elite theory, like literally the only guy in Canada that would even touch elite theory, and I had the honor and the privilege of being in his class.
You know,
right?
this
So anyway,
explains a lot, actually, now that I think about it.
yeah. Anyway, so I was talking to my professor, who was the woman, right? And she said, "Well, it's crazy how they don't want to give people money for another comparative politics lecture now that Dreifeld retired, right? And also the other guy that's in comparative politics, he's a big China expert. You could look up Professor Charles Burton. He always writes for the Globe and Mail. He talks about the Chi-Coms. He was actually there when he was a grad student during the Cultural Revolution, right? So they said they can't give money to that, which is like what our department's known for, but they can give money to a fucking Indigenous Studies person. And she's like, not that I have anything against it, it's just that the university itself has an Indigenous Studies department, but also it's incredibly difficult to find a political science person who is also an Indigenous person that is studying Indigenous studies in like through politics, because you have to be you have to have in Canada, we have what they call a status card, which is proving that you are 100%, or I think the percentage, I think you can get like half or a quarter Native Indigenous. So it's like you have to have your status card in order to qualify to get that job in a political science department. You have to also study Canadian Aboriginal politics in through a political science department. So incredibly difficult to hire someone like that, right? So you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
a lot of universities, they just like, it's either like business departments or like stem cell stuff or like, you know, woke stuff that like rich parents will pay for. It's like very much a consumerist model. And so like a lot of classic humanities departments like philosophy and history. Well, no, history they have to use it for like, you know, because it's advantageous to them. But a lot of like classic departments, they're just being gutted, and it's a shame, right? Like
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I know like a lot of these departments, they have like a lot of antiquated practices. Like our good friend, modern hermeticist,
Mhm.
right? He's in Waterloo. He's about to get his PhD in history, but he originally wanted to go for classics. But the classics departments, you basically have to like start doing Latin or Greek in high school, and only like really rich kids go to high schools that offer that. So, like classic departments, it's kind of like very stuffy and higher class. But other than that, like a lot of classic literature, poli sci stuff, like all these departments are being phased out. They're being like they're going towards general humanities, and it's just like to me, it's like it's just puts a bad taste in my mouth.
Well, Gio, before you go, the super chats. There's just 2 super chats over here I wanted to read. So, subject to change, $4.99. Everyone subscribe or else. That's true. So everybody subscribe right now to the YouTube channel and all the other channels. You see this thing above here where it says btr.ninja. If you go to btr.ninja, that's the page where all the links are there for everywhere you can find Break the Rules. Audio, video, podcasting, social media, everything. btr.ninja, that is the mothership. That is where you find everything. If we get shut down, btr.ninja is still going to be around. So anyway, Nathaniel Wagner, $5. You could have had someone based like Jim Medicare on.
Well, he's hard to get. He's hard to get.
Yeah, but had the Lugan press on, ice cold takes, guest acts like latest game he played was Oregon Trail. That was a good game, actually, Oregon Trail. I remember that game. No, look, I want to say much respect for Clive for coming in. I really appreciated the fact that, look,
now
how
I know
rare...
why you didn't...
Why
sorry,
then what? Well, no, it's very rare to get somebody on who would write for the mainstream publications, and now it is done. So, what were you gonna say?
You didn't put on the chat in the BTR.
I couldn't put on the chat. Well, I couldn't put on the chat because right now we're actually streaming on Instagram. In fact, I haven't checked on that how it's going.
No, I mean like the actual. During with Clive.
Yeah, exactly. Because right now we're still it still shows here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, look at this. It still shows the old video, which I don't understand why. I guess it just means that the internet is really crappy. I tried the satellite internet.
It was advantageous because, I mean, the chat was just going after him. It was,
Yeah. I mean, look, if
I told them to be nice. I go, please be nice, please.
No, they're not going to be nice.
And then ABC is like, I'll be... Yeah, and ABC is like, I'll try to be nice to you, but it's really hard, Gio. I'm like, oh my god.
No, I know the chat. I know the chat's not going to be nice, but it was a very important thing.
Experience.
Yes. By the way, Anchor says if I was a subscriber, I'd unsubscribe because this is terrible. Fuck you. Listen, how rare is it? How rare is it that we bring on people who work for the New York Times and on these publications? It's a very important thing. It's not something that any other channel like this does. I mean, I do want to test out to see whether or not we're in the bubble right now. And I know you got to go, Gio, but I'm very happy that there were, let's say, pro Anita Sarkeesian, well, not pro Anita, but, closer to balancing these things out.
The mainstream narrative.
Yeah, closer to balancing it out. I'm glad that was also something that happened. But, all right, listen. Yeah, whatever.
Gio, I think I'm gonna hop off too. But hey, I wrote up some of my Letterkenny ramblings in a piece that's going up tomorrow, so I'll shoot that over to you when it's up.
Oh, thank you. No. Thank you, Qua. And did I call you Qua? TV.
Yeah.
Qua.
I have that on my mind because I'm writing this review of Owen Cyclops' book, and so I had to go through like the content Emmys. But Quay, please come back, my friend. Maybe we'll have you on BTR stream again. What? By the way, Lev, what is next week?
Oh boy, what is it next week? We have 3 streams next week. So first of all, for Monday, and this is confirmed, I just actually have to change the date, but for Monday, that's the Gnosticism debate. So Miguel is going to be joining us there, along with Neil, and finally, I mean, this was a very long time coming. There was a lot of back and forth. But yeah. But I'm finally glad that we got Tyler Hamilton in. So Tyler is coming in. Everything's been solved right now from his end. So Tyler's coming in. No need to worry. Everybody's in, and that's going to be happening on Monday, not tomorrow. So please allow me to just change the date over here on YouTube. Thank you for reminding me about that, by the way. And then we are going to have. Let's see. We are going to have. Let me scroll forward here. We are going to have Angel Eduardo and John Lakache speaking. So that should be
Who are they?
Josh, Josh Lakache?
I think I've heard of that name.
Here, let me.
Oh, he's the. I think I.
Add Josh Lakache. He interviewed some.
He interviewed a bunch of.
Some pretty big people, including General Flynn. So that should.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. What are we going to talk about in that stream?
Liberalism. We're talking about liberalism. Whether liberalism is dead. Oh no! Back to that again. No, it's gonna be great. I'm very excited about that. And we have Andrew Rogers. By the way, Gio, before
we could bring in Carl.
Carl's bad. More like Carl's good or Carl's great. But before you.
Well, not recently, but.
No. Okay. Well, I haven't been following in these politics. But before you go, Gio. Any thoughts about the new game that Andrew created?
Super Gun 64.
Oh my god, it's finally released?
Well, the pre-Ralpha build is out. You can download it from my blog at tuxloves.me.
I gotta do this.
Wait, say that again. What's the address?
tuxloves.me. That's the website. If you go under the posts section, you can find a Gunt post.
Oh my god, it says optimum security threat detected. What is going on? Andrew,
I don't know
Andrew,
what you're using.
What are you doing?
My website is literally a static thing hosted on like a Linode with Cloudflare. I literally spun it up like a day or two ago. It might be just because the domain was recently redirected. I don't know. I'm just using Cloudflare with some static pages. There's nothing sketchy there whatsoever.
I gotta view this. Did you hear the latest news? The last man. The third man. He is finally out. He has burned the bridge.
Oh, Gator? Oh, yeah. I did a reading today of Ralph published an article on his page today called "The Smoke," and I actually did a reading in his accent, with on my YouTube channel. So if you go to my YouTube channel, it's on my Twitter.
See this. Yeah, I'm gonna go and retweet it.
My
God.
Ethan Ralph presents "The Smoke."
I can't believe I thought Shannon would go right off the cliff with him. I can't believe this. Let me see where
Geo,
You
I think
may?
we should.
Oh my God! Aiden Paladin retweeted it.
Oh yeah, Aiden and Jim have been tweeting about my game. Flamenco's played it on stream now. Warski reacted live to the game. He was quite excited. He said, whoever made this is a king.
Andy, yeah.
Wait,
God,
Geo,
is
Geo.
that what he looks like now with his fucking eyes? Oh my God.
Geo. What if I get Ethan Ralph on BTR and we'll play the game?
That would
That'd be
never
amazing.
happen. That would never happen.
Never say
dream.
never. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
I would just be insulting him for half an hour till he rage quits.
No. Don't
You'd be
insult him.
felting him too hard. Don't felt him too hard. He's really sensitive.
Yeah, I'd be totally felting him. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I want to get Andrew Meyer here. Andrew Meyer knows him. I want to see if I can get some connection going right now. If we can make it happen. This is on stream negotiation, Geo. This is what it's all about. I'm gonna figure this out, and that would be pretty sweet, though, right? Like if we get him on the stream, play the game, and who are some of the people's heads? So obviously Ethan Ralph's head we recognize, but who are the other? There's like the first level
Flamenco.
The first level where you get the kiwi, where you get the golden kiwi thing. There is the head of somebody on there. Is it?
That's Joshua Connor Moon, of course.
That's it. And who's the girl?
His sworn enemy.
And there is a girl who I think is up in the in the moon, where Ethan's up as the moon, and then there's also another.
I think it was like one of them is Jarbo, and I don't think there's a girl. I have to look at the skybox texture again, but in the on the stained glass there's a mixture. Some of the pictures there's like Alice and there's May.
Yeah.
In the castle. I'm quite proud of the main room that I did.
Is Xander in there somewhere?
Not yet, but I'm open to adding new stuff. I'm still kind of trying to. Right now, the most annoying thing is I fucked up his the armature for his arms, so his arms are like all fucky on the main character of the gun. So, but I mean, like
amazing.
The gunt, like the head model and the body, I'm quite proud of. Like the head and the body are really solid, but his arms are like spaghetti all over the place right now. So I'm not very good at doing bones and Blender, so it's a disaster.
That's crazy.
It's a disaster.
But it's an amazing work of art, and I hope that Nintendo hires you. You know, you can one day you'll be the uncle who works at Nintendo that a kid is going to brag about having.
But you're gonna shit on me because you're a Sega kid.
Ban you.
Oh, me too. I was a
go,
Sega kid too. Wait, which Sega systems did you play?
Oh, me? I didn't play any. I was saying you're a Sega kid. You'll be like starting shit with me on the playground.
Oh, okay, yeah. See, I felt like I had some kinship with you when I thought you said that you were a Sega kid, but apparently no. I was the only.
Oh God.
I was the only
Sega
Sega
threw in the
kid.
towel by the time I
Anyways,
was a kid.
Wait, hold on, Gio. Before you go, I have another announcement to make. Just like another double confirmation I got. Speaking of Sega. The guy who did the singing in the Knuckles theme, you remember the Knuckles theme from Sonic Adventure? Born on an island in the heavens.
I don't.
The blood of my ancestors flows inside me. Okay,
God.
so that dude, Marlon Saunders, is joining us for another Sonic stream. So I'm going to have the dude who did the theme of Knuckles.
I don't know anything about Sonic.
Who did the Knuckles theme vocals in Sonic Adventure 1. He's coming on BTR.
I literally just played the Sega Genesis one when I was a kid. I think it was the Sonic 2, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, that's close enough.
The Sega Genesis one, what was it?
He did the edgy Sonic voice in Sonic Adventure?
No,
Oh,
he
God.
did the he did the theme of Knuckles, the vocals for the theme of Knuckles. It was him.
Okay.
It was him, and it was Dread Fox. And Dread Fox, he did the rapping part. Where he says that
Nice.
unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles. That was Dread Fox, and he did the voice of my ancestors flows inside. I am a fucking terrible singer, but the point is that Marlon Saunders, he is incredibly talented. His voice is just, it's like honey, it's like sweet nectar, and he is an American singer, songwriter, and record producer. Now, it says over here he's a professor of voice at Berklee College of Music. That is not the case. I
Wow.
think that, well, he was, but now he's back in New York City, and I believe that he is part of the school that Verse Laloon's father is also in. So don't quote me on that. I think that's what's going on right now. I would love to get Verse Laloon's father. Oh, he's in Tisch right now. He's an adjunct professor. Marlon Saunders, adjunct professor at Tisch. So he is part of that whole group right there. And again, like, regardless of any of the criticisms that we would level at the university system, when it comes to like singing and dancing and those things, I think New York City is one of the best places for this high level stuff. But
Yeah, like Juilliard.
yeah, Juilliard, exactly.
Anyways, I gotta go, guys. So I'll see you.
See ya, Gio.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for coming in.
Brr,
So let me
brr,
see.
see you next week.
See you next week. Okay.
Bye.
So let me see if we have Adam over here. I have no idea if Adam is a troll or not. That's the thing. Like, I have no idea who this guy is, so I'm not going to take a risk this time around unless we are streaming this on Odyssey, and we are not streaming this on Odyssey right now, so I'm not taking that chance. But let's see who else we have. Sorry, Adam. Look, contact me, DM me. I want to figure out if it's safe or not. But again, like, I want to make sure that the stream keeps, that everything is fine, that we don't have trolls. And again, maybe you're not a troll.
Leroy
Gosh
Jenkins.
darn dirty trolls.
Maybe you're a perfectly good guy. I don't know. But it's I don't know. It's weird, like the current paradigm that we're in right now. Because speaking with Clive,
The current meta.
yes, I really do appreciate the fact that Clive was able to come on the stream and speak with us. And I never want to think that I am in a bubble as well when it comes to the views that I hold. So I think it is important for him to come in. What I really liked that Clive did, which I don't think enough people do, is he held my feet to the fire when it came to certain things that I stated. So if I state something, I need to have something to back it up. So, for example, when I was talking about the situation with the FBI going against the parents of the kids who were criticizing the critical race theory, I managed to find the article where it was actually talking about that afterwards, after he said, like, what exactly, where is your source on these things? And now this is on foxnews.com, which again, like, oh my God, it's Fox News, whatever. This is the environment that we're in, where unfortunately only one side of the spectrum is going to talk about these things. So U.S. Rep Jim Jordan, the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, took aim at Attorney General Merrick Garland during an appearance on Fox News' The Ingram Angle on Tuesday night. Earlier in the day, Jordan revealed that an unnamed whistleblower had disclosed documents showing an FBI unit wanted agents to use counterterrorism measures against parents who criticized local school boards. Specifically, the unit wanted agents to use a so-called threat tag, in this case, edge officials, when tracking such incidents. So that's what happened, and I think that they didn't double down on it. I think they started going the other direction. So it ended up, I mean, there's still going to be this tendency, I think, from the White House to persecute people who would go against their agenda. And I think it's something that's happening right now in Canada as well, for those who have been keeping track. I mean, you see the kind of lies that Trudeau is able to level, calling the truckers racist and bigoted and all that. It seems to be wearing off. I really don't know how many people actually believe this stuff. But I don't know, Andrew, any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think the ones on Reddit definitely believe it, but I don't know about outside of that. I have no clue. As someone who's not on the ground in Canuckistan.
But as far as yourself go, and we may be going soon, I'm not exactly sure, but
Yeah.
As far as you go, did you see the stream today?
I unfortunately missed a lot of it.
No problem. Later on, watch the stream. I would love to know what you think.
All right.
And I think that we may be ending right now. Usually, what I do is I
Okay.
announce that we're going to have this.
Wait, hold up.
Okay.
I want to thank you, Lev. I just want to say thank you
All right.
because you have identified a niche that was actually weirdly not filled for providing a platform for people to talk from all different sides and different places. And it is supremely interesting, frankly. And though I disagree with Clive and his kind of mainstream opinions, it just reminds me of that Santa meme where it's like, Dad, is Santa? No, son. Imagine how many people would have to be in on it.
Well, I have a final question for you then, King Salmonfish. Do you think that
Yes.
towards the end, and you watched the whole stream, right, from beginning, well, the end especially, right?
I missed a little bit in the middle because I had to do some like business work.
But you saw the end.
Yes.
Okay, so the final thing that Clive was mentioning is that that he is not in agreement with these big organizations, the letter agencies going after people. And in a way, it was kind of a callback to what I think is a post. I don't even want to say the name for the algorithm reasons, but the thing that happened in 2001. So. It echoed this anti-Iraq war journalist mentality. I think there was a bit of within Clive. I can't read his mind, but I think it almost echoed man, I don't want to be in the position of being somebody who is in favor of the three-letter agencies going after people. And he made that known, and I appreciate the fact that he made that known. But it is interesting how there may be a battle. I'm not saying for him, but I think for certain journalists in general, I think there may be a battle going on inside the subconscious when it comes to, do I go into the direction of being like the old anti-war in Iraq peacenik who's against these various three-letter agencies? Or am I going to excuse the three-letter agencies because they happen to agree with the woke opinions that a lot of my colleagues hold? So I'm curious if you or anybody else has any thought on that before we go.
Yes, I do. First of all, I value the fact that he's willing to say such a thing because of the social pressure. I've been seeing people, even in the dissident sphere, caving to the extreme pressure that is being applied to everyone. So when I see somebody do something like that, I appreciate it very much. And my take is actually that within, I guess you could say, the left wing or mainstream or whatever you want to call it, circles, it frankly isn't even necessarily the parties just switched. There was that poll that came out that showed a huge swing in party affiliation, whereas the Democrats don't even have the majority anymore. But actually, my understanding of the situation is that within these circles, a lot of people have come to realize what things are true and what things are not true. Some of them choose to actively be fraudulent knowingly, but there's it's kind of like a lot of these ideas have been refuted and they are actually aware of it and tasked with defending that on a regular basis. So what you're seeing is a unified projected message, but underneath the surface, I'm 100% sure that a large amount of these people are not really on board, and they're trying to CNN is effectively on its last leg. People are bailing left and right from all these different places, and finally certain Substack and stuff like that have enough kind of normie authoritative validity for journalists to jump onto that and maintain a proper normal person kind of authority without becoming super fringe and blah blah blah. But the issue is still the perception of Substack or things like that as being, it's how much do they buy the narrative, or how much are they afraid of the various social pressures? And a lot of it is people I can respect this. It's just that people want a good life. You know, they just want a life with maybe a house and some nice things. And that can, you know, get into consumerism and all that, but that's not my point. My point is people are constantly vying and navigating through life, trying to just, you know, derive some kind of satisfaction. And obviously that can go wrong, but I have to have a lot of respect for basic people. And the last point is Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying were talking about how in the process of like narrative collapse and like the great fluctuations of the various conflicts of history and how those play out, a lot of people are just they're literally who's, you know, and they were talking about like having to address that and like how we would focus on the people who are just going to like shift over to the next thing and act like they were there the whole time, you know, and like trying to hold accountable the small players or give them forgiveness appropriately so that like this kind of thing doesn't continue to happen over and over again. So I do feel that forgiveness and like having to air out some of these things is definitely very necessary, but there are absolutely certain limits that are incredibly extreme type situations at which I personally don't I just don't do that anymore. You know, I just don't put up with it. It's like something has to like stop kind of thing, you know. But that's it.
Excellent. That was really well said. And also for Tux Loves You. Listen, if you brought that into the ether right now, the idea of Jim coming on BTR, let's do it. Let's ask Jim. I mean, look, what do we have right now? We have Ethan Ralph's show, the Kill Stream, and what does the Kill Stream do? The Kill Stream brings on people who are internet famous, people who you know have a certain notoriety within the internet to argue. And that's great. They've been doing it a lot longer than I have. But what BTR does is kind of like what we saw today. Nobody does what BTR does when it comes to bringing in people who have never heard of Ethan Ralph, who have never heard of the Kill Stream, who have never heard of 4chan even, although that is not to say Clive heard of 4chan, obviously. But in general, just people who are from this whole different world, bringing them in, also bringing in people who are U.S. generals, people who work at the, we had one of the heads of NASA on for one of the first BTR episodes ever. So I want to continue in that tradition, and that is something that I think is very rare in this space. Michael said Glenn Greenwald. That would be interesting. I don't know. I have my reservations about certain. It's not even the left thing with Glenn Greenwald. I think that there are certain opinions that he has about, although it is kind of a left thing, but it's a left thing that I disagree with him having specifically to do with foreign policy. And I'm not saying that I'm a foreign policy hawk, neocon, whatever. I just believe that I don't know. I believe that certain actions that are done for profiteering are very bad. Obviously, the military-industrial complex, but I also believe that there are such things as gaps of power. When you leave a certain region, what ends up happening to it? All these things have to be weighed. But Glenn Greenwald, obviously, that would be a very, very interesting guest. And let's see what else. I want to also comment before we go on King Salmonfish, and I really appreciate it, brother. I really appreciate all the amazing things you have. Jim and Anita on BTR, Webam Aristocrat. I wonder, by the way, if Webam Aristocrat, if you got that moniker from Jim, since he was the Internet Aristocrat. But anyway, I really like what you have to say, King Salmon. One other thing I wanted to comment on that conversation that we had with Clive is I mentioned that people who speak with pollsters or journalists who ask their opinion, they are, I think, going to be a lot more honest with, let's say, whether they support Trump or some other politically incorrect opinions that we have. But I have been noticing that there is this downplaying of the extent to which people are self-censored in the workplace. I mean, sure, you could say, the workplace is not for politics. I agree. But it doesn't matter. It still is for politics in terms of there are certain politics that people have to abide by, and it's very subtly created. It's not something that you can outright point to and say, this is how it's done. I think it's little things and just how people are forced to perceive the world and how people are supposed to think about various things. I think it creeps in, and I'm not saying the workplace is the place to discuss dissident politics, but as far as where your mind can even venture to, I think just the peer pressure from workplaces, from after workplaces, from your general community within a lot of these urban centers, I think it does force you into a percussion bed or what you are and aren't allowed to think. So I don't know what to say. That is something you have to work on.
I have a weird take on this, right? So I've kind of been like, I was looking up memes about the show Bleach and the concept of spiritual pressure. Part of it was a discussion I was having with my friend about Tim Pool and how Tim Pool, everyone kind of knows that he's very self-censorious because of YouTube. And like, that's just kind of how that is. And that's become sort of a major problem. And specifically, I have a weird take on there is one particular word in the English language that has been leveraged so much as to basically be the root of like censorship of words, as being like, you can't say that. And unfortunately, that is the N-word, right? And what happens, what I realized with myself is I don't like that word. I don't like you know, like the dehumanizing concept that everyone is so upset about. But when you cannot speak a word, it becomes this repressive pressure that like builds inside of you, and you'll go like insane with anything like that. You'll start to go insane. So I just decided my outlet for that is to literally just say, I reserve the right to say literally whatever I want. Yeah, and then the argument about consequences or whatever. But I'm not going to say it in almost any circumstance because, like, I don't really like the word. I don't really, you know, like if I'm making a joke or something with one of my friends, honestly, like, sure. I mean, I'll say literally anything pretty much as long as, like, it's in a small group of friends that are, you know, we know we're being ignorant and stupid or something. But, like, otherwise, that's the problem. This singular word has kind of been leveraged into an entire list of words that you cannot say, and they're all effectively rooted in the same like the same kind of like victimization or dehumanizing, like weaponized empathy, control over language. And so I don't know, like when you have people in the workplace, and like you're right, you know, you're like, if you have any common sense, you're not just going to talk about whatever when you're on the job site or whatever. But at the same time, these lead to repressive, like subconscious forces that cause people sometimes even to form like extreme sexual fetishes and stuff like that as an outlet. And so like that can be expressed in a whole bunch of different ways, which could include your entire political ideology just being some kind of like Freudian, you know, like, I don't know, some kind of just outlet for a repressed thing. So yeah, I mean, my take is that a lot of people are faced with this right now, and it's all just swept under the rug. But the reality is that the attrition rates are completely out of control, and the whole thing is just collapsing in on itself because human nature is going to win that fight. It just is.
You know who I would really like to have on? It's kind of a non sequitur ish, but have you ever thought about having James Lindsay on?
Well, thought of it. I mean, okay, you know what? Let's do it. If you think that James Lindsay, and yes, you know what? I should stand up more for BTR. So yes, James Lindsay should have no problem coming on BTR at all. I'm going to bring him in. I mean, look, I know people who know James. I think it's something that can actually be done. So there is no reason not to.
Oh, that'd be so epic.
Yeah. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. The fact that you are all here. And as soon as this episode ends, you are going to see a link. In fact, let me post that link regardless. You are going to see a link to the Gnostic debate stream, which is happening. Everybody's confirmed. It's not happening tomorrow, though. It is happening on Monday at 7 p.m. It was supposed to happen the earlier Monday. Now it's happening this Monday. So be prepared for that. I'm very, very excited for the Gnostic stream. Neil's going to be back. Miguel Connor of Aeon Byte, which has been around for a very long time, that is coming back too. So here, let me just post it over here. And let me try one final thing before we go. So, although I don't know if it's going to work on this screen. Oh, it's going to work on this screen if I switch to, let's see, foreground. No, let's see. Oh, here we go, left camera. Hold on. No, that's not it. Why is my camera not showing here? Left camera is supposed to. Okay, activate. I don't know. Look, sometimes these things work, sometimes they don't. I don't know why I'm down here lower with my chin almost on the ground. But either way, we're going to figure these things out as we go along, and I really appreciate everybody watching. Mwah! Good night, everybody. Take care. Good night.